You've probably been to a late-night restaurant where the clock ticks past midnight and the streets outside grow silent. But have you ever wondered what happens after the doors close? When the staff heads home and the last customer finishes their meal, what lingers in the shadows? Tonight, we're diving into stories from the depths of the night, where strange occurrences blur the line between reality and something much darker. So sit tight, because these are the most terrifying things that happen in restaurants when the lights went out. Story 1. The Chef and the Phantom of the Abandoned Restaurant. Chef Thomas had always loved working late. There was something about the solitude of the kitchen in the stillness of the night that felt comforting to him. He'd inherited the old restaurant from his mentor, who had passed away under mysterious circumstances a few months before. The building was old, almost ancient. Its brick walls were chipped and faded. The wooden floors creaked with every step, and the kitchen smelled of herbs and spices long ingrained in the air. The kind of place that gave off a sense of time standing still. Most people were too afraid to work in the restaurant after hours. But not Thomas. He had always been drawn to its charm, its history. He didn't mind the dim lights, the constant creaking, or the shadows that seemed to linger in every corner. It felt like home. But something changed that night. It had been a particularly slow evening, with only a handful of customers who trickled out long before closing time. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking the final minutes of the night shift. Thomas had been working tirelessly in the kitchen, preparing the day's specials for the morning. He was used to the quiet, but tonight the silence felt different, thicker, almost. He paused for a moment, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. Then he heard it. The faintest sound of a chair scraping across the floor in the dining room. He frowned, thinking it was a draft or the building settling, but the noise persisted. Slowly, he set down the knife and walked cautiously toward the dining room. The door to the main hall was slightly ajar, and the room was bathed in the dim glow of the last remaining light fixtures. The tables were still set from the last guests, each one pristine, untouched. And then he saw it. A chair in the far corner of the room was slowly moving, as though someone had just stood up and left. But there was no one there. His breath caught in his throat, but he shook it off. It's just the wind, he told himself. But as he moved closer, a sudden coldness washed over him, a chill so sharp it made his skin crawl. The temperature in the room seemed to drop at least 10 degrees. In an instant, his breath fogged in the air and a sense of dread filled his chest. He glanced around, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. The scraping sound had stopped, replaced by a low, almost imperceptible whisper. "Thomas." He froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was the voice of his mentor, the man who had taught him everything about cooking, the man who had vanished without a trace just months before. Thomas had never heard him speak like this, though. The voice sounded distant, as though it came from a place far beyond the walls of the restaurant, from somewhere deep in the building. "Why did you leave me?" the voice whispered again, now clearer. His heart began to race. He turned quickly, expecting to see someone behind him, but the room was empty. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, twisting along the walls like they were alive. His chest tightened as the voice continued to echo in his head, a constant presence that made his stomach churn. "Don't ignore me." Thomas tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the spot where the chair had been, still rocking ever so slightly as if someone had just gotten up. He could feel the weight of the room pressing in on him, the walls closing in, suffocating him. The whisper came again, this time louder, more urgent. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. There was nothing except the figure, a shadow, standing in the doorway to the kitchen. It was tall, dark, and unmoving. Thomas blinked, his vision clouded by the overwhelming sense of dread. It was too much. The room was spinning. He felt dizzy, lightheaded. He couldn't breathe. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the shadow vanished. The next morning, the restaurant was locked up tight. Thomas hadn't shown up for his shift, and his phone went straight to voicemail. No one had seen or heard from him. When the police arrived, they found nothing out of the ordinary. The restaurant was untouched. No signs of struggle. But the staff who worked there after hours swore they could still feel the presence of someone still walking the halls. Some say Thomas is still there, roaming the kitchen in search of something. Maybe redemption, maybe answers. And if you happen to find yourself there late one night, standing in the same kitchen where you last worked, you might feel the chill in the air, hear the scraping of a chair, and even hear a soft whisper. But the scariest part? You might not be alone. Not anymore. Story 2. The waiter and the woman who never left. Late one night, in a luxurious restaurant nestled in the heart of a bustling city, the last of the patrons had left. The place, known for its elegant ambience, dim lighting, and exquisite cuisine, was now deserted, the only sound being a quiet clink of silverware being washed in the back. Ethan, a young waiter, was finishing his shift. He wiped down the tables, preparing to close the restaurant for the night. It had been a long day, but there was something about the late hours that always made him feel a strange sense of calm. That was until she walked in. It was nearly 1 a.m. when the heavy door creaked open and a woman stepped inside. Her footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space. The bell above the door chimed softly, but it sounded far too loud in the silence. Ethan looked up, a little surprised. It was well past the restaurant's usual closing time. She was beautiful, strikingly so, dressed in a long, flowing black dress, her features obscured behind large, dark sunglasses. Despite the hour, she looked as though she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. She didn't speak at first. She simply stood by the door, scanning the dimly lit room with a kind of calm confidence. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something unsettling about her presence, something off, but he quickly pushed it aside as he walked toward her. "Table for one?" he asked, trying to sound friendly. The woman nodded, almost imperceptibly, and then took a seat at a table near the window. She placed her handbag beside her, but made no effort to take off her coat or settle in. As Ethan approached to take her order, he noticed that there was something odd about her. Her hands were delicate, but her skin was pale, almost ghostly. There was an aura of sadness around her, something in her posture, in the way she gazed out the window at the empty street. But he couldn't place it. "What can I get you?" he asked, trying to shake the feeling of unease that had settled over him. She looked up at him, her eyes hidden behind the large glasses, and smiled faintly. "I'll have the special, please, and a glass of red wine." Her voice was smooth, soft, almost too calm, but there was something about the way she spoke that made him uneasy. Ethan didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and left to place the order in the kitchen. When the meal was prepared and brought to her table, she didn't touch it. Instead, she stared out the window, her eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Ethan watched her from the corner of the room, trying to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When he returned to check on her, the room had grown even quieter. Her plate was untouched, and she hadn't moved. The strange, unsettling air hung around her like a cloud. He approached cautiously, hoping to ask if everything was okay. But when he opened his mouth to speak, Her voice cut him off. "Are you afraid?" she asked, still not turning to face him. Ethan froze. Her words felt like a weight pressing on his chest. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond, then finally said, "Afraid? Of what?" "Of me," she whispered, her voice now colder, more distant. Ethan's heart began to race. He tried to brush it off his nerves as the kind of strange energy that sometimes happens late at night. But as he turned to leave, the woman spoke again. "You'll understand soon," she said, her voice now barely audible, almost a whisper. "I never left." The words hung in the air as Ethan made his way back to the kitchen, but the eerie feeling clung to him. He tried to shake it off, but it wouldn't go away. He didn't want to look back, but curiosity got the best of him. He turned around, expecting to see her sitting calmly, waiting for him to bring the check. But she was gone. The table was empty. No purse, no coat, nothing. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He rushed to the front door, expecting to see her walking down the street, but the night was still. There was no sign of her anywhere. She had disappeared. Completely. Confused and shaken, Ethan walked back to the table. There was no evidence that she had ever been there. No crumbs. No stains. Just an untouched plate of food, sitting in the middle of the table, still steaming. But as he began to clear the table, he noticed something strange. A napkin, folded neatly in the middle of the plate, had a note written on it. Ethan unfolded it, his hands trembling. "You will see me again, when you least expect it." A cold shiver ran down his spine. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He turned around, half expecting to see her standing behind him, but the restaurant was empty. It was then that he realized the woman had never left, and perhaps she never would. Story 3. The Last Order of the Vanished Customer. It was the kind of diner you might drive past without a second thought. Located just off the side of a lonely highway, it was the sort of place where the neon lights flickered intermittently, and the smell of greasy comfort food filled the air. The sign outside read, "Open 24 hours," and though it didn't attract many customers, it always seemed to be open no matter the hour. Tonight was no different. Mary, a young waitress who had been working the late shift for a few months, was used to the quiet. The diner was almost empty, save for the occasional truck driver or late-night traveler looking for something to eat. The clock on the wall ticked past 2 a.m., the hours dragging by with little excitement. Most of the regulars had already finished their meals and left, and the diner was eerily silent. Then, just as she was about to clean the last table, the door creaked open. A man stepped in, his face obscured by the dim light from the sign outside. He was tall, with a heavy coat that looked out of place for the season. He looked worn, his clothes faded, and his eyes, there was something off about them. Dark, almost hollow, like they had seen too much. His hair was graying, and his skin looked unnaturally pale, as if he hadn't seen the sun in ages. He took a seat at the counter, without saying a word, his eyes never leaving the menu in front of him. Mary glanced over, noting his strange demeanor, but figured he was just another weary traveler. She walked over to him and asked, "What can I get you?" Without looking up, he replied in a hoarse voice, "Just a burger, fries, coffee." His voice had a strange edge to it, as though he hadn't spoken in a long time. Mary didn't think much of it. She took his order, went to the kitchen, and returned with his meal. The man hadn't moved. He was still sitting there, staring at the menu as if it held some sort of secret. She set the plate in front of him and asked if he wanted anything else. He didn't respond. His hands were wrapped tightly around his coffee cup, his knuckles white, as if he was holding on for dear life. Something about the scene made Mary feel uneasy, but she dismissed it and went back to the kitchen, hoping the night would end without incident. But as the hours went by, the man didn't touch his food. He didn't take a sip of his coffee. He just sat there, staring into nothing. The occasional truck passed outside, its headlights flashing through windows, but the man didn't react. It was as if he didn't even notice the world around him. Mary tried to ignore the growing sense of dread gnawing at her. She glanced at him several times, wondering why he hadn't eaten or even moved. It felt as though time had stopped in the diner, and the only thing that existed was the man at the counter, locked in his own world. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She approached him again, nervously asking if everything was all right. "Sir," she said softly, "is everything okay with your meal?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he slowly turned his head to look at her. His eyes, cold and lifeless, met hers, and for a moment, it felt as though the air itself had thickened. She swallowed hard. "Are you okay?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm waiting," he said, his voice barely audible. "For what?" Mary asked, her stomach churning. The man stared at her for a moment, his lips twitching into something like a smile. "For when it's too late." Mary's heart skipped a beat. The diner felt colder all of a sudden, the air heavy, like the walls were closing on her. Something wasn't right, but she forced herself to smile, offering a polite nod before quickly retreating to the kitchen. When she came back to check on him a little later, the man was gone. The plate of food was still there, untouched. His coffee was still steaming, but the man himself had disappeared. She rushed to the door, looking outside, but there was no sign of him. No coat on the seat, no footsteps in the snow. It was as if he had never been there at all. Mary stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding. Then she noticed something on the counter where the man had been sitting. A napkin, folded neatly, with a message scrawled on it in dark ink. "The shadows are waiting. You'll see me again." Mary felt a cold shiver run through her. She stared at the note for what felt like an eternity, before finally mustering the courage to pick it up. She had no idea what it meant or who the man was, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something much darker had just happened. The police were called, but no one could find any trace of the man. There were no missing persons reports, no evidence he had ever entered the diner. As the days passed, it felt as though the entire incident had been a figment of her imagination. But every night, when Mary closed the diner and looked out the window, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was watching her. And sometimes, late at night, she swears she hears the soft scrape of a chair moving just outside the diner's door. Sometimes, the most terrifying things aren't the things you can see, but the things that stare back at you in reflection. The diner was small, nestled along an empty stretch of highway, a place where weary travelers would stop to stretch their legs and get a bite to eat. But for Carla, a young woman who had just moved to the area and recently started working there, the place felt oddly comforting, even at night when the other patrons had long gone. It was a slow shift, one of those nights when the air seemed to hang still and the lights of the diner flickered in that strange, rhythmic pattern. Carla had worked long enough to know the quirks of the place. The way the windows would sometimes fog up despite the air conditioning. The old jukebox in the corner that seemed to play by itself when no one was near, and the constant clicking of the coffee machine, even after it had been turned off. But none of that ever really bothered her. Until tonight. It was just after midnight when she was wiping down the counter, preparing to close up, As she glanced around, her eyes landed on the old mirror behind the counter. It was a large framed piece, scratched and weathered by time, but had always been there. Every night, Carla would briefly catch a glimpse of herself in it. But tonight, something was different. The reflection seemed off, not in a way that was immediately noticeable, but there was something about it, something that made her stop in her tracks. She took a few steps toward the mirror, narrowing her eyes as she studied the reflection. At first, it looked the same. The counter, the chairs, the empty booths. But as she peered closer, something shifted in the glass. She blinked, but it was still there. A woman, standing at the far end of the diner. Her figure was hazy at first, almost translucent. But as Carla's heart began to race, the woman became clearer. She was tall, with long dark hair cascading down her back, dressed in an old-fashioned white dress. Her features were indistinct, but Carla could see her staring directly at her. It wasn't a casual glance. The woman's eyes were wide, locked on Carla as if she was waiting for something. Her lips parted slightly, as though to speak, but no sound came from the mirror. Carla's breath hitched. Her pulse quickened. She turned around quickly, half expecting to see the woman standing behind her in the diner. But the place was empty, still, silent, as it should have been. There was no one there, only the reflection in the mirror. She walked closer, heart pounding, and in the reflection, the woman in the white dress seemed to take a slow step forward. Carla froze. The woman was no longer standing at the far end of the diner. She was closer now, just on the other side of the counter. Carla's blood ran cold. The woman was still staring at her, but her expression had changed. Her face was twisted in an agonizing mix of fear and something darker, as if pleading for help, or maybe for something more sinister. Without thinking, Carla turned back toward the counter, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. But the moment her gaze flicked back to the mirror, her breath caught in her throat. The woman wasn't the reflection anymore. Instead, it was Carla, but the reflection wasn't quite right. She looked different. Her eyes were wide, almost frantic, her mouth twisted in an unnatural way, and there was something cold, something hollow, deep inside her stare. The reflection of herself smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was a grin, a twisted, malevolent grin that made Carla's stomach turn. The reflection didn't move with her. It just stayed there, its eyes locked onto Carla's, and the grin grew wider. Her pulse raced as she tried to step back, but her feet felt frozen to the floor. The reflection continued to stare at her, its smile never fading, its eyes never leaving hers. Carla felt as though something was pulling at her from within the mirror, something that wanted to break free, something that wasn't her. In a panic, she turned, desperate to escape the reflection, but the mirror, something inside it, seemed to call to her. She could hear a voice in her head, faint but growing louder. "Help me, help me." It was a woman in the white dress. Carla turned back to the mirror in desperation. But the reflection wasn't just staring anymore. The figure in the glass was reaching out, as if it were trying to crawl out, its hands pressing against the mirror, fingers trembling as they reached for her. Carla let out a scream and ran. But as she reached the door, she could feel something heavy, something cold, brush against the back of her neck. She whipped around, but there was nothing. No woman, no reflection, just the empty diner. The door flew open, and Carla rushed out into the cold night air, her heart pounding in her chest. But when she looked back at the diner, she saw it. The reflection in the window wasn't hers. It was a woman in the white dress, standing behind the counter, staring out into the night. and she was smiling. Carla never returned to the diner. The next day, when the owner arrived to open up, he found everything as it should be. Empty booths, clean tables, and the mirror, which had always been a part of the diner, hanging just as it had for years. But when he took a closer look at the mirror, he saw something that made his stomach churn. In the reflection, standing at the counter, was the same woman in the white dress, the one Carla had seen the night before. But this time, her eyes weren't wide with fear. She was smiling, her mouth stretched too far, her face unnaturally twisted. And as the owner gazed into the reflection, the woman's smile grew wider, more sinister, as if she had been waiting for him. He stepped back, terrified. The mirror had been there for decades, and no one had ever experienced anything strange until Carla had arrived. As the diner closed for the night, the staff noticed something even more unsettling. The mirror, once clear and bright, now seemed clouded, like something from the past was trapped behind it. They could no longer see their own reflections clearly, only distorted shapes moving in the glass. And in the reflection, there was always a woman in a white dress, standing still and watching. No one could explain it, and no one dared ask what it was that the woman wanted. Some say she's still there, trapped in the reflection, waiting for the next person to come close enough. Others say she wants to be freed. But one thing is certain: those who look into the mirror will never be the same again. And when you glance at your reflection, you'll wonder if what you're seeing is really you or if something else is looking back. Before we head into the next story, can I ask you something? When was the last time you heard a noise in your house and ignored it? Do you remember what it sounded like? A creak, a knock, a whisper? Sometimes we brush off what we're not ready to face. Let's hope that's not the case with this next story. Story 1, The Silent Shipwreck. I was alone out on the water that night, as usual, but something felt different about that evening. The wind was still, almost non-existent, and the sky was a deep shade of blue, yet there was an unsettling tension in the air that I couldn't quite explain. The sea was as smooth as glass, reflecting the fading light of the sun, and I had been fishing for hours with no luck. That wasn't usual. The ocean was usually generous to those who waited, but tonight it felt as if the water itself was hiding something. Something I wasn't meant to see. It was getting late, and I began considering packing it in. I decided to throw out one last line, cast one more net, but then I saw it, something off in the distance, barely visible on the horizon. A shape, a form. It looked like a ship, but there was something wrong with it. Too still, and it had no lights. It was too close to be natural, yet too far to be anything I recognized. I couldn't understand it. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to row closer. As I approached, the ship became clearer, but the more I saw, the more it unsettled me. The ship was old, impossibly old. The kind of ship you only see in history books or old photographs. The sails were tattered, the hull battered by what seemed like years of storms. But what truly made my stomach churn wasn't the ship itself. It was the silence. There was no creaking of wood, no rumble of an engine, not even the soft ripple of water as the ship drifted. Just stillness. I was nearly alongside it now, and I could see the deck. Dark, empty. There wasn't a single soul in sight. I should have turned around, but instead, I kept going. That's when I saw it, the movement, a shadow, standing still, but moving across the deck at an unnatural pace. It was tall, cloaked in black, its form hard to make out, but it was unmistakably there. No footsteps, no sound, just this shadow gliding, far too fast to be human. My heart began to race in my chest. I wanted to shout, to ask who it was, but I couldn't bring myself to make a sound. The figure didn't acknowledge me. It didn't even seem to notice me. And then, as quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished. Just like that. I watched in stunned silence. But the figure, everything, was gone. I snapped back into action, fumbling for the engine. My hand shook as I tried to start it, but I managed to pull away. I didn't dare look back until I reached shore. When I did, the ship was gone, as if it had never been there in the first place. The water was as calm as it had been before. Not a trace of the ship remained. I don't know what happened that night, but I'll never forget it. Something was there with me. Something I wasn't supposed to see. And I know, deep down, that ship still haunts those waters. I feel its pull every time I go back, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to shake that feeling. Story 2, the echoes of the past. It was one of those nights when the sea felt like it was alive, restless and unnerving. The kind of night where the waves crash just a little too forcefully, and the wind howls with a cold bite. I was on my usual route, fishing the same waters that I'd known for years. The boat rocked gently as I drifted, the faint sound of the engine humming underneath me. But there was something in the air that night, something heavier than usual. It had been hours with no catch, just the dark expanse of the ocean surrounding me, the kind of stillness that made you question if you were even real. That's when I saw it, off in the distance, near the shore, a figure, a woman. I almost didn't believe it first, but as I steered closer, I could make out her silhouette standing alone on the rocks. She was dressed in old, tattered clothing, her hair flowing wildly in the wind, almost like she belonged to a time that wasn't now. I don't know why, but I felt a pull to her, as if something was drawing me in, something I couldn't resist. I slowly maneuvered the boat toward her, my engine cutting through the waves. When I was close enough to shout out to her, I noticed something strange. She wasn't moving, not even when the wind gusted fiercely, whipping her hair and clothes around. She just stood there, staring out at the sea. I called out to her. "Hey, are you all right?" My voice seemed to disappear in the wind, but she didn't flinch. There was something in her stillness that unsettled me. I pulled the boat closer, more cautious now. As I got near the rocks, I saw her face, pale and weathered. Her eyes, there was a sadness in them, but also an intense depth, as though she'd seen things that no one should ever have to. She finally turned her head toward me, and when she did, I felt a chill run through my entire body. "This place, it's never been the same since the fire," she whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear her over the crashing of the waves. I didn't understand. "What fire?" I asked, but before I could say anything else, she was gone, just vanished. One moment, she was there, standing on the rocks, and the next, nothing. I thought I was losing my mind. There were no waves, no signs of her moving. She had simply disappeared. I couldn't get back to shore fast enough. My heart pounded in my chest as I checked every inch of the boat, but there was no sign of the woman. I tried to shake it off, but the words she said kept echoing in my mind. Since the fire. I didn't know what fire she was talking about, but I couldn't let it go. The next day, I did what any sensible man would do. I researched it, and what I found shook me to the core. There had been a fire years ago, before I was even born. It had burned down the very dock I had been fishing from, and the woman, the one I saw, she was one of the victims of the blaze. A passenger on a boat that sank right there. There was no way she could have known about it. Not unless I still go out on that water. But I never go near those rocks. Every time I pass by, I can't help but feel her watching me. And every time the wind blows in just the right way, I hear her whisper, "This place, it's never been the same since the fire." Story 3, The Silent Fisherman. It was just a regular morning, or at least that's what I thought. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden light over the calm waters. The sea, as usual, was quiet, almost too quiet. It's hard to explain, but there's a feeling you get when the water's still, like it's waiting for something to happen. I've been out on the boat alone, tried to reel in a decent catch, but the ocean seemed to be keeping its secrets from me that day. I passed by the usual spots, the ones where I always catch something, but not today. There was nothing, no fish, no movement, just silence, stretching for miles. My eyes kept scanning the horizon, hoping for something, anything, to break the monotony. That's when I saw him, a man, sitting on a small boat in the distance. I didn't recognize him, but there was something about the way he was sitting so perfectly still that made me uneasy. He wasn't fishing. He wasn't doing anything. Just sitting there motionless, staring out at the open sea. The kind of posture that felt too deliberate, too unnatural. The man was dressed in worn clothes, as if he'd been out on the water for far too long. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just the silence of the ocean pressing down on me. Either way, I steered my boat closer to his, moving cautiously. As I got nearer, I could see his face, sunken, pale, with a far-off look in his eyes, like he wasn't really there, like he was waiting for something or someone. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. Not a flinch, not a movement. It was as though he couldn't hear me, or maybe he didn't want to. I pulled my boat closer, thinking I might be able to help, but when I reached out, ready to speak again, I froze. The man's boat was empty. There was no one there. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Just a small, rickety boat drifting on its own. No sign of the fisherman who had been sitting in it just moments before. I looked around, scanning the water, but there was no sign of him. No splash, no movement in the water, nothing. I felt my heart racing as I grabbed the oars and started to row faster, my thoughts racing. I checked every inch of the boat, thinking maybe he'd slipped overboard somehow, but there was no sign of him. No splash, no evidence of anything happening, just the emptiness of the sea. I kept looking over my shoulder as I rowed back to shore, waiting for something to appear, for him to somehow reappear from the water, but he never did. When I got back to the dock, I immediately asked the other fishermen if they'd seen him, if they knew who he was. But no one had seen him. No one had heard of him. It's been years since that day, but every time I go out, I think about that boat, the empty boat that seemed to drift on its own, the fisherman who wasn't there. And no matter how many times I try to explain it, I still don't understand what I saw. But one thing for sure, there's something out there in the sea that I'm not meant to know. Story 4, The Deep Sea Whisper. It was supposed to be a simple night of fishing, just another routine trip out on the water. The kind of trip that had become second nature to me. I had my gear, my boat, and a calm sea under the night sky. I'd been out on the ocean countless times, so nothing ever seemed to faze me. But that night, something felt wrong. The water was unnervingly still. No ripples, no waves. It was like the ocean was holding its breath, waiting for something I couldn't understand. I dropped my line in, expecting the usual quiet hours of solitude. But then came the first sign that something wasn't right. I felt it, a whisper, faint at first, but distinct enough to make me pause. I froze. It was soft, almost like a breeze brushing past me, but there was no wind. The whisper came from beneath the boat. It was a voice, distant and muffled, like someone calling out from the deep, but not in words I could understand. Just a sound, a rhythm, a beckoning pull. I looked around, but there was no one else out on the water. The stars above were distant, too far away to bring any comfort. I leaned over the side of the boat, peering into the dark water below. The whispers grew louder, just on the edge of hearing, as if the ocean itself was trying to speak to me. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just my mind playing tricks. But the more I listened, the clearer the whispers became. They weren't just sounds. They were calling my name, softly at first, but with urgency that grew stronger with each passing second. Come closer, the voice seemed to say, though it was more feeling than words. It was like the ocean wanted me to reach deeper, to fall into it, to listen more closely. I leaned over further, my heart pounding in my chest, when suddenly, a sharp tug on my line. I jerked back in surprise, but I didn't feel the familiar way of a fish on the hook. Instead, there was resistance, something heavy, something that didn't belong. I pulled hard, but the line didn't budge. The whispers were now a constant murmur in the air, all around me. It felt like the sea itself was pulling at me, trying to draw me down. The tugging grew stronger, the force jerking my boat in every direction. I was losing control. The boat rocked violently as I tried to reel in whatever was caught, but it felt like something far more powerful than a fish was at the other end. The whispers turned to murmurs, then to shouts, louder and louder, until they became deafening. I could hear my own name now, echoing across the water like a warning, but there was nothing I could do. With one final, desperate pull, the line snapped. The boat lurched violently to one side, and I felt the weight of it pull me forward, into the cold, dark water. I stumbled back in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The whispers ceased. The ocean was still again. The boat settled, quiet and eerily calm. I spent the next few hours trying to recover my bearings. The whispers never returned, but the silence that followed was even more unsettling. I could feel their presence, their weight on the water, like a memory etched into the depths, something ancient and unfathomable. When I returned to shore, I checked my line again, looking for any sign of what I had pulled up. Nothing. No fish, no debris, no trace of anything. Just a smooth, empty line. It's been months since that night, but I still hear the whispers when I close my eyes. And every time I return to sea, I can't help but wonder if they're still out there, waiting, calling, reaching for something or someone. Are you using headphones right now? Or is the sound playing out loud in the room? Is anyone else listening with you, or are you truly alone? Have you looked around lately just to be sure? The next story has a strange way of making people feel watched. Let's see if it does the same to you. Rainy nights have a way of making the world feel different. The sound of raindrops tapping against windows, the distant roll of thunder, the way the darkness seems thicker when the streets are slick and empty. But rain doesn't just bring cold and silence. Sometimes it brings something else. A shadow waiting just beyond the streetlights. A whisper carried in the wind. A presence you swear wasn't there a second ago. And when the rain falls the hardest, that's when they come. These are true accounts of people who learn that on rainy nights, the real danger isn't what you see. It's what you can't. Story 1. The Thing in the Road. Miguel had always loved driving in the rain. The way the world seemed quieter, the rhythm of the droplets against his windshield. It was almost peaceful. But after that night, he never drove in the rain again. It was past midnight. The storm had been raging for hours, turning the road into a river of glistening asphalt. Miguel was the only car on the highway, his wipers struggling to keep up with the downpour. Then, just up ahead, a figure in the middle of the road. His heart jumped. A woman, standing completely still, her head lowered, her soaking wet dress clinging to her thin frame. Miguel barely had time to react. He slammed the brakes, tires screeching against the wet pavement as the car skidded to a stop just inches from her. His pulse pounded in his ears. She didn't move, didn't even flinch. She just stood there, rain streaming down her face, her arms limp at her sides. Miguel swallowed hard. He reached for the horn, but then she lifted her head, and his breath caught in his throat. Her face, it wasn't right. Her skin looked dissolved, like water had been eating away at it. Her eyes were sunken pits of black, and her mouth, it stretched far too wide, splitting open like something not human. Miguel didn't wait. He hit the gas. The car lurched forward, swerving around her, tires splashing through puddles. He checked the rear view mirror, expecting to see her standing there. But she wasn't. She was closer, running, no, gliding, after the car, her twisted mouth open in a silent scream. Miguel pressed the accelerator harder. His car roared down the empty road, water spraying up around him. Then the headlights flickered, the engine sputtered, and the car died. His breath came in ragged gasps. The rain hammered against the windshield, blurring his vision. He fumbled for the keys, trying to restart the engine. Then a tap from the window, slow, deliberate. His head turned, dread curling in his stomach. She was there, right outside, smiling. He didn't remember what happened next, only that when he woke up, it was morning. His car was parked perfectly on the side of the road. The engine was fine. His phone sat beside him, battery full, as if nothing had happened. But when he stepped out of the car, there were footprints in the mud, leading up to his window, and none walking away. Now, every time it rains, Miguel refuses to drive, because he knows she's still out there, waiting. Story 2. Someone at the door. Sophia had always loved rainy nights. Something about the sound of raindrops against the roof made her feel safe, warm inside her small house, curled up with a book and a cup of tea. But after that night, she learned that not everything outside should be kept out. Sometimes it tries to come in. It was a stormy evening, the kind where lightning split the sky and thunder rattled the windows. Sophia had just settled onto her couch when she heard it. A knock. Slow, soft. At first, she thought she had imagined it. The rain was loud, the wind howling. Maybe a branch had hit the door. Then, another knock, more insistent this time. A chill crept over her skin. Who would be out in weather like this? She hesitated, then moved toward the peephole, her breath shallow. Outside, through the distorted glass, a figure stood in the rain, not moving, not shivering, just standing there. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, she saw it clearly. A man in a long, soaked coat, his face obscured by the shadows of his hood, his posture too still, too rigid. Sophia's stomach tightened. Something felt wrong. She cleared her throat. Who's there? Silence. Then a whisper, "Let me in." The voice was hoarse, barely audible over the storm. Sophia's fingers tightened around the doorknob. Every instinct told her not to open it. "Are you lost?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Do you need help?" No answer, only the sound of rain. She backed away, her pulse pounding in her ears. Then, slowly, carefully, she checked the locks. The deadbolt was in place, the chain secured, and then a third knock, louder. This time the doorknob turned. Sophia's breath hitched. The lock held. She took a shaky step back, heart hammering, and reached for her phone. Then a soft creak, not from the front door, from the back door, the one she hadn't locked. Her blood turned to ice. She spun around just in time to see the kitchen door slightly open. The rain poured outside, the wind rattling the frame, and just beyond the threshold, a figure stood. No coat, no hood, just a man, too thin, his skin gray and shriveled, his face twisted into something wrong. And when he smiled, his teeth were too many. Sophia didn't scream, didn't move. Then the front door rattled violently, as if something else was still outside, desperate to get in. And that's when she realized the thing at the back door had never knocked. The lights flickered. The walls groaned under the force of the wind. And when she blinked, both doors were shut, locked. Everything was exactly as it had been. But on the floor, near the back door, muddy footprints led inside. She never saw who or what stood outside that night. But whenever it rains, she sleeps with every lock checked twice. Because something knocked on her door once. And next time, it might not wait for her to answer. Story 3, The Face in the Window. Daniel never liked storms. Something about the way the rain blurred the world outside, the way shadows twisted under flickering streetlights, always made him uneasy. But that night, the rain didn't just bring darkness. It brought something else. It had been pouring for hours, the kind of relentless storm that made the streets look like rivers. Daniel sat alone in his apartment, the dim glow of the TV casting long shadows across the walls. Then, a flash of lightning. For a split second, the room lit up like daylight, and in that moment, something moved outside his window. His apartment was on the 4th floor. His breath caught in his throat. He turned his head slowly, his heart pounding. The rain streamed down the glass, making it hard to see. But beyond the distorted water trails, a shadow, a face, pale, hollow eyes, watching him. Daniel's body locked in place, cold dread sinking into his bones. The face didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, pressed against the glass as if it had always been there. Another flash of lightning, and it was closer. He stumbled back, knocking over a chair. His mind raced. He was 4 stories up. There was no ledge, no way someone could be standing outside. But it was there. And then, a tap, soft, deliberate, coming from the inside of the glass. Daniel's stomach twisted. That wasn't possible. He forced himself to look. The window was open, just an inch, just enough for something to slip through. His pulse thundered in his ears. He rushed forward, slamming it shut, locking it so hard his fingers ached. Then silence, only the rain, only the wind howling through the city. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. It had to be a trick of the storm, maybe a reflection, maybe his exhausted mind playing tricks on him. Then his phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. His hands trembled as he opened it. No text, just a photo of his window, taken from inside his apartment. Daniel didn't sleep that night, and now, every time it rains, he keeps his curtains closed, because he knows if he looks outside, something might be looking back. Story 4, The Man Under the Streetlight. Roe loved rainy nights. There was something calming about the way the city slowed down. the way the streets emptied as people hurried indoors. On nights like these, he liked to walk home instead of taking a cab, enjoying the solitude of the rain-soaked streets. But after that night, he never walked home in the rain again. It was late, nearly 2 a.m., and the rain had been falling steadily for hours. The streets were deserted. The only sound the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the pavement. Then, a flickering streetlight up ahead, and beneath it, a man standing completely still in the downpour, his head tilted slightly downward, his face hidden beneath the brim of a drenched hat. Raoul slowed his pace. Something about the figure made his stomach twist. He wasn't moving, wasn't shivering, wasn't even reacting to the rain pouring over him. Raoul cleared his throat, forcing a casual tone. "You okay, man?" No response, just the soft buzz of the flickering light above. He walked faster. Then, a squelching sound, like wet shoes against pavement. Raoul's breath caught. He didn't want to look, didn't want to turn around. But instinct won over logic. And when he did, the man was closer. Not walking, not running, just closer. Still beneath the streetlight, still unmoving, still watching him. Raoul's pulse pounded his ears. It was time to go. He turned forward again, walking as fast as he could without breaking into a run. His apartment was just 2 blocks away. Then, the light above him flickered. His heart stopped. The man was right there, not under the streetlight anymore, not standing still anymore, just inches behind him. Raoul's breath hitched. He bolted, sprinting down the street, lungs burning, the rain blurring everything around him. He reached his apartment door, hands shaking as he fumbled with his keys. Then, a shadow reflected in the glass, right behind him. He twisted the key, throwing himself inside, slamming the door shut, locking it. Silence, just the rain. His chest rose and fell in ragged breaths as he pressed his forehead against the door, heart pounding. Then, slowly, he turned to look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No sign of the man. No wet footprints. Nothing. Raoul let out a shaky breath. Maybe it had been his imagination. Maybe. Tap. A soft knock against the door. Then the lights flickered, and from the other side, a whisper. "You dropped something." Raoul didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there, too afraid to breathe. The knocking didn't come again. By morning, everything was normal. No footprints outside his door. No sign that anyone had been there. But when he picked up his keys from the floor, they were wet, like they'd been lying outside in the rain. Raoul moved out of that apartment 2 months later. But whenever he walks past the flickering streetlight, he never looks at the person standing beneath it, because he knows, if he does, they might be looking back. How's the lighting in the room you're in right now? Dim? Flickering? Have you checked behind you in the last few minutes? No reason, just curious. This next story, let's just say it has a way of making quiet spaces feel different. There are roads that people avoid at night, not because of potholes or dangerous turns, but because of something else, something that waits in the darkness. Truckers, taxi drivers, and late-night travelers whisper about a figure seen on lonely highways, a dry body, skin stretched thin over bone, hollow eyes that seem to stare straight into your soul. Some say it's just an illusion, a trick of the mind after too many hours behind the wheel. Others know the truth, because those who stop for it never make it to their destination. These are their stories. Story 1. The passenger on Route 66. Carlos had been driving trucks for over 15 years. He had seen just about everything. Drunken wanderers, animals darting across the road, even an occasional ghost story among fellow truckers. But nothing prepared him for what he saw on Route 66 one night. It was past 2 a.m., and the highway stretched endlessly ahead of him, illuminated only by the glow of his headlights. His eyes burned from exhaustion, and he made a mental note to pull over at the next rest stop. Then, a figure appeared on the side of the road. At first, he thought it was a hitchhiker, tall, thin, unmoving. But as he got closer, his stomach twisted. It wasn't just thin. It was withered, skin dry and cracked, stretched tightly over bones, as if all the moisture had been drained from its body. Its face was hollow, eyes sunken deep into their sockets. And yet, it smiled. Carlos's foot hovered over the brake pedal, but every instinct screamed at him to keep driving. Then, the truck engine sputtered. The radio crackled with static. The headlights flickered. And before he could react, the figure was no longer on the roadside. It was in front of the truck. Carlos yanked the wheel, barely avoiding collision. The truck skidded, tires screeching against the asphalt. When he finally came to a stop, his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. He turned his head, breath shallow. The road behind him was empty. No body, no signs of impact. But then, a whisper right next to his ear. "You should have stopped." Carlos didn't think, didn't breathe. He slammed the truck into gear and tore down the highway, refusing to look in the mirrors. When he finally reached the next truck stop, he told an old-timer what he had seen. The man's face went pale. "You saw La Carcasa Seca," he muttered. "The dry body." Carlos barely slept that night, and to this day, every time he drives that stretch of road, his radio crackles at 2 a.m., and sometimes he hears the whisper again, "You should have stopped." Story 2. The Thing in the Backseat. Luis had been a taxi driver for years. He was used to the strange and unexpected, drunk passengers, late-night confessions, even an occasional person who swore they were being followed. But nothing compared to what happened one night on a deserted road outside of town. It was nearing 3 a.m., the city lights long behind him. He had just dropped off a passenger in a rural area and was making his way back when he saw it. A figure on the side of the road. Tall, motionless, facing away from him. At first, Luis thought it was just another hitchhiker, but something felt wrong. Its body was too still. The way it stood, unnatural, like a mannequin someone had placed there. Then, as he passed, the headlights illuminated its face, or what was left of it. Dry, shriveled skin clung to the skull, the mouth pulled into a permanent grin. Its eyes were black, sunken, voids of nothingness. The skin looked brittle, cracked like old leather left under the sun for too long. Luis's stomach turned. He didn't stop, didn't even think about stopping. He pressed down on the accelerator, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The figure disappeared in the rear-view mirror, but the smell lingered, a dry, rotten scent like something long dead. And then, a rustling sound. From the back seat, his blood turned to ice. He had locked the doors. He knew he had locked the doors. Slowly, terrified, he adjusted the rear-view mirror, and his heart stopped. There in the back seat, the figure was sitting, grinning. Luis slammed the brakes, the car screeching to a halt. He turned around. The back seat was empty. His breath came in ragged gasps, his entire body shaking. He didn't drive back right away, didn't move for a long time, just sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to convince himself he had imagined it. But the smell remained. thick, dry, rotten. The next morning, he found something in the back seat, a long, brittle piece of skin, like something had shed before vanishing. Luis quit driving taxis after that, and to this day, he refuses to look in the rearview mirror when driving alone at night, because he knows if he does, he might see it again. Story 3. The gas station encounter. Emilio had been working the night shift at a gas station for 3 years. He had seen it all. Drunk drivers barely able to keep their cars straight. Truckers half asleep at the wheel, an occasional shady character looking for trouble. But none of them scared him like the man who came in one night. It was just after 2:30 a.m. The road outside was empty, stretching into miles of darkness. No cars had passed in nearly an hour, and the only sound was the buzzing of the fluorescent lights above. Then, the bell on the gas station door chimed. Emilio looked up from his phone, expecting to see another late-night traveler. But the man who entered was wrong. His skin was dry, almost papery, stretched too tightly over his bones. His lips were cracked, pulled into a permanent, unnatural grin. His eyes, sunk and hollow, seemed to absorb the dim light, making his face look even more skeletal. And the smell, it hit Emilio like a wave of rot and dust, like something long dead had been disturbed. The man didn't speak, didn't blink, just walked, slow and deliberate, toward the refrigerators at the back of the store. Emilio swallowed hard, his instinct screaming at him to leave, to run. But he forced himself to stay. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, his voice coming out more unsteady than he wanted. The man stopped, turned his head slowly. Then he grinned wider. That was when Emilio noticed something even worse. The man wasn't breathing. His chest never rose, never fell. He just stood there, like a hollow shell pretending to be human. Then, without a word, he turned back to the refrigerators and opened one. A blast of cold air hit Emilio's face, and the lights flickered. For a split second, the entire store plunged into darkness. When the lights came back on, the man was gone. The door never chimed. The floor was empty, but the refrigerator door was still wide open. Inside, on the glass shelf, something lay motionless, a piece of brittle, yellowed skin, like something had shed before disappearing. Emilio quit the gas station 2 weeks later, and he still refuses to stop at any highway gas station after midnight, because now he knows some travelers don't need fuel. They're just looking for something else. Story 4, The Last Ride. Manuel had been driving buses for over 2 decades. He had taken passengers through long, empty highways, winding mountain roads, and deserted rural areas. He thought he had seen everything. Until one night, during Lent, when he picked up a passenger he would never forget. It was a quiet route, just a handful of people left on board. The last stop was still 30 minutes away, and the road ahead was nothing but darkness stretching endlessly under his headlights. Then, a figure on the roadside, thin, motionless, standing just beyond the reach of his high beams. At first, Manuel thought it was just another late-night traveler needing a ride. Against his better judgment, he slowed the bus, stopping just a few feet away. The figure didn't move. Then, without ever stepping forward, it was suddenly at the door. Manuel's stomach twisted. The man, or whatever was unnaturally thin, his skin dry and stretched tight, like old leather left in the sun for too long. His hollow eyes bore into Manuel's, dark voids where there should have been life. And that grin, a wide, cracked smile, too large for his face. Manuel's fingers trembled over the door controls. His instincts screamed at him not to open it, but the thing outside tilted its head, as if it knew what he was thinking, as if it had heard it. Then, slowly, deliberately, it raised a single skeletal finger and pointed at the door. Manuel's body moved on its own. He didn't remember pressing the button, didn't remember making the decision, but the door hissed open. The figure stepped inside. The air turned heavy. The other passengers sat in silence, staring straight ahead, as if they couldn't see what had just entered. Manuel gripped the wheel, forcing himself to move. He needed to drive. He needed to get to the last stop and get rid of this thing. The bus lurched forward. In the rear view mirror, the figure didn't take a seat. It stood in the aisle, still, unmoving, grinning. The road stretched on forever, the hum of the engine the only sound. Then, the lights inside the bus flickered. The mirror showed the passengers sitting motionless, except for one, the last row, where the figure had been standing. It was empty. Manuel's throat tightened. His grip on the wheel turned painful. Then, a breath, not his own, right next to his ear. "This is my stop." The bus slammed to a sudden halt. The door hissed open on its own. Manuel didn't turn around, didn't dare to look. But as he stared at the empty road ahead, his knuckles white against the wheel, he saw something move in the mirror. A dry, withered hand reaching up from beneath the last row of seats and pulling something down. The door slammed shut. The bus remained silent. The next time Manuel checked the last row, a single, brittle piece of skin lay on the seat, like something had shed before leaving. He never drove that route again. And to this day, late at night, when he parks his car in the driveway, he never checks the back seat, because some passengers never really leave. From which country are you listening right now? What time is it where you are? Midnight? Later? Are you in bed or somewhere darker? Because what comes next is a different story, but just as strange, just as real, and it might feel even closer than the last one. The first day of work is supposed to be exciting, nerve-wracking maybe, but nothing more than a few awkward introductions, some paperwork, and getting used to the new routine. But for some, it's the beginning of something much, much worse. Sometimes a job is not just a job. Sometimes the walls of a workplace hold secrets. Sometimes the people around you know something you don't. And sometimes you were never supposed to be there in the first place. These are real stories of people whose first day on the job became a nightmare they could never escape. Story 1, the night shift. Caleb had never worked a night shift before, but when he landed a job as a security guard for an old office building, he figured it would be easy. Just a few rounds, some camera monitoring, and getting paid to sit around. No big deal. The building itself was strange. 8 floors, but only the first 5 were in use. The top 3 levels had been abandoned for years. Nobody gave him a straight answer about why. They just aren't in service anymore, his manager told him. No need to go up there. That was his first red flag. His second red flag, the cameras. Each floor had surveillance, except for the top 3. The monitor for those levels only showed static. They haven't worked in years, his co-worker shrugged. But that night, as Caleb settled in, something strange happened. At 2:13 a.m., one of the static-filled screens flickered. For a second, just a second, there was an image, a hallway, a flickering light, and a figure. Caleb's stomach dropped. He leaned closer. The image vanished, returning to static. His radio crackled. A voice came through, but it was distorted. like someone speaking through water. Come up, come up. His hands turned ice cold. He checked the main entrance. Locked. No one had come in. Then the elevator dinged. He turned his head, heart pounding. The door slid open. It was empty, but the button for the 8th floor was pressed. A slow, suffocating dread crawled up Caleb's spine. He knew he shouldn't go. He knew something wasn't right. But before he could react, the doors began closing. And inside the elevator, for just a brief moment, a shadow moved. Something had pressed that button. Something wanted him to come up. He ran out of the building and never came back. The next morning, his manager called. Why did you leave? Caleb hesitated. The 8th floor? I saw something on the cameras. Someone called me on the radio. Silence. Then, in a low voice, his manager said, That's impossible. The cameras on those floors don't work. And your radio? It was never connected to an outside channel. Story 2. The basement worker. Isaac never expected much from his new job. He was just a temp, hired to do some basic inventory work in the basement storage room of an old department store. The place had been around since the 1940s, a relic of another time, with creaky floors and a history no one really talked about. His supervisor, an older man named Gary, barely gave him instructions. Just check the boxes, log them in the system, and don't go past the 3rd aisle, Gary muttered. Why? Isaac asked, half joking. Gary didn't laugh. He just stared at him for a long moment before shaking his head. Just don't. Isaac didn't think much of it. The basement was huge, rows and rows of tall metal shelves stacked with forgotten inventory. The air was thick with dust, and the dim, buzzing fluorescent lights gave everything a sickly yellow glow. For the first few hours, nothing happened. He counted boxes, logged numbers, did exactly what he was told. But as the night dragged on, a feeling crept over him. A feeling that he wasn't alone. At first, it was just a sense of being watched. That prickling unease at the back of his neck. Then, the noises started. A faint rustling, a shuffle of movement. Isaac turned his head quickly, scanning the aisles. Nothing. He brushed it off, chalking it up to exhaustion. But when he returned to his work, a box had moved. It was small, about the size of a shoebox, but it hadn't been there before. He was sure of it. He picked it up. No label, no markings. Just an old, battered cardboard box. Curiosity got the better of him. He pulled at the lid. Don't touch that. The voice made him jump. Gary was standing at the entrance, his face pale and tight. Isaac dropped the box, his heart hammering. What the hell, man? He stammered. You scared the crap out of me. Gary didn't answer. His eyes weren't on Isaac. They were locked on the end of the aisle. Isaac turned, and his stomach dropped. There was a shape, just barely visible past the 3rd aisle. Tall. Wrong. It wasn't standing. It was hanging, as if suspended by something unseen, its limbs slack, its head tilted at an impossible angle. The air was suddenly thick, suffocating, like the whole basement had sunk into a different kind of reality. Then, it twitched. Isaac didn't remember running. He didn't remember how he got back upstairs. But the next thing he knew, he was outside, gasping for breath, the cold night air burning his lungs. Gary followed moments later, locking the door behind him. His hands were shaking. You opened something you shouldn't have, he whispered. It's been locked down there for years. Don't come back. Isaac never did, and the department store shut down a few months later. No explanation. No final sale. Just gone. Story 3. The hotel maid. Mariana's new job seemed simple enough. Clean rooms, change linens, restock toiletries. The hotel wasn't anything fancy, just a mid-tier place off the highway, the kind of place travelers stop for a night before moving on. She had heard the rumors. Of course, every hotel has them. Stories about guests who never checked out, whispers about certain rooms the staff avoided. But she needed the money, so when the manager told her, "Never go into room 308 alone," she just nodded and got to work. Her first few shifts were uneventful. The usual mess: unmade beds, empty bottles, the occasional forgotten phone charger. But then one afternoon, she was cleaning the third floor when she noticed something strange. Room 308's door was slightly open. The "Do Not Disturb" sign hung from a knob, swaying gently, though there was no breeze in the hallway. She hesitated. She knew she wasn't supposed to go in alone, but she also knew that guests sometimes forgot to check out, and if she didn't clean the room, she'd get in trouble. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. "Housekeeping." Silence. She knocked again. Still nothing. Slowly, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was freezing, colder than it should have been. The air smelled stale, like something had been locked away for too long. The curtains were drawn, casting the room in dim light. Then she noticed the bed. It was made perfectly, tucked so tightly it looked like no one had ever slept in it. But on the pillow, an imprint, like someone had been lying there just moments ago. A chill ran down her spine. She quickly moved to restock the towels, tried to ignore the unease creeping over her. But then, the bathroom door creaked open. Her breath caught in her throat. The lights were off inside. She could barely see past the doorway. Just an empty sink and a darkened mirror. Then she saw it. A figure, not reflected in the mirror, standing in front of it, motionless, watching her, her body locked up in pure terror. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. The figure didn't breathe, didn't flinch. It was just there like it had always been there. Then the door to the hallway slammed shut behind her. The lights flickered, and the figure moved. Mariana didn't think. She ran, bolted out of the room, down the hall, nearly tripping over herself as she reached the stairs. When she finally told the manager what happened, he just sighed. "You went in alone, didn't you?" She nodded, shaking. The manager rubbed his temples. "That room hasn't had a guest in years. We don't rent it out anymore." Mariana quit the next day. But to this day, she swears, as she ran out of room 308, she heard a whisper behind her, "You made the bed wrong." Story 4. The Late Night Janitor. For Alex, working as a janitor at the university library seemed like the perfect gig. The pay was decent, the work was easy, and best of all, he got to be alone. No noisy customers, no annoying coworkers, just silence. Or at least, that's what he thought. His shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 5 a.m. His main job was simple: clean the study areas, vacuum floors, and make sure all the lights were off before locking up. The library had 3 floors, but the 3rd floor had been closed to students for years. Renovations, his boss had said, but Alex never saw any work being done. And yet, something always felt off about that floor. The first time he noticed it was during his 2nd week. He was mopping near the staircase when he heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow, coming from the 3rd floor above him. He froze, his grip tightening on the mop handle. No one else was supposed to be here. He grabbed his flashlight and hesitated before calling out, "Hello?" Security. Silence. Then a thump, a heavy sound. like a chair being dragged across the floor. His stomach twisted. He knew the building was old, and old buildings made noises, but this wasn't settling wood or a gust of wind. This was movement against his better judgment. He climbed the stairs, each step echoing in the quiet. When he reached the top, the air felt different. He had cleaned this floor once before, just quickly dusting and wiping down the desks, but now, standing there, it felt wrong. The rows of bookshelves stretched into the darkness, their spines like teeth in a gaping mouth. The long wooden tables were empty, the chairs neatly tucked in. Nothing seemed out of place. But then he noticed it. One chair, pushed back slightly, facing the staircase, like someone had been sitting there, watching. His pulse quickened. He took a shaky step forward, and the lights flickered. For a brief second, the entire room was swallowed in darkness. Then, a shape, a shadow, too tall, too thin, standing at the far end of the room. Alex's breath hitched. He pointed his flashlight, but as soon as the beam hit the space, nothing. The room was empty. His heart pounded against his ribs. He was done. He turned on his heel, heading straight for the stairs. And then the whisper, "Why are you leaving so soon?" right next to his ear. The flashlight slipped from his fingers, clattering against the floor. He didn't stop to pick it up. He ran, bolting down the stairs two at a time, out of the library and straight into the freezing night air. He quit the next morning. The library still hires new janitors, but they never last more than a few weeks. And sometimes, late at night, students swear they hear footsteps on the third floor, even though it's supposed to be empty. Before we continue, just a thought. Have you ever noticed how some rooms feel different at night than they do during the day? Like the walls are listening, or the shadows are waiting for something. Maybe it's your mind playing tricks. Or maybe this next story will explain why. When you book an Airbnb, you expect comfort, maybe a unique stay, or even a little adventure. But what if I told you that some guests leave with more than just memories? Some leave with scars. There are houses where the air feels too still, rooms where the temperature drops for no reason, and hosts who seem off. These are real stories of people who checked in, but wish they never had. Story 1, The Basement Door. Danny and his girlfriend Chloe were road tripping across the country when they found the perfect Airbnb. A charming old farmhouse with scenic views and great reviews. The host, an elderly woman named Margaret, greeted them warmly. She showed them the kitchen, the cozy living room, the spacious bedroom, and then, as they passed a locked door in the hallway, she stopped. "This leads to the basement," she said, her smile fading. "It stays locked. Don't go near it." That was all. No explanation. No further discussion. Danny and Chloe exchanged glances but didn't question it. At first, everything was fine. Until that night. Around 2 a.m., Danny woke up feeling uneasy. The house was silent. Too silent. Then, a noise. A faint thump from below. The basement. Danny held his breath. Maybe it was the pipes. Maybe an old house just made noises. Then, another thump. This time louder. Chloe stirred beside him, her eyes half open. "Did you hear that?" she murmured. Danny nodded, swinging his legs over the bed. Then, a sound neither of them could mistake. A dragging noise. Slow, heavy, coming from beneath the floorboards. Danny's stomach turned. Then, a click, the distinct sound of a door unlocking. They turned their heads toward the hallway. The basement door, slightly open. a dark sliver of space visible between the frame. Something moved behind it. Not footsteps, not breathing, just shifting, like something was waiting. Danny grabbed Chloe's hand. They didn't speak, didn't think. They ran, barefoot, straight out the front door, the cold night air biting at their skin. They drove for miles before stopping at a gas station, hands shaking as they tried to process what had just happened. The next morning, Danny sent a message to Margaret, demanding an explanation. She never responded, and when he checked the listing again, it was gone, as if it had never existed. To this day, Danny wonders what would have happened if he had opened that door all the way. But deep down, he knows, and he never books an old farmhouse again. Story 2, The Hidden Room. Allison had traveled alone before, but this was her first time staying in an Airbnb by herself. She had booked a charming one-bedroom cottage in the countryside, perfect for a quiet weekend away from the city. The listing had glowing reviews, and the host, Richard, seemed friendly, maybe too friendly, constantly checking in through messages. "Everything okay, Allison? Are you comfortable?" She appreciated the hospitality at first, but then things started to feel off. The first night, she heard a noise in the walls, a faint scraping sound, like something shifting behind the wooden panels. She told herself it was just an old house settling. Then, on the second night, she found the door. It was hidden behind a large wooden dresser in the bedroom. The only reason she noticed it was because the dresser wasn't fully flush against the wall. A thin crack of darkness peeked through. Curious, she pulled the dresser back just enough to see. A door. No knob, no lock, just a hole where a handle should have been. A cold wave of unease washed over her. She pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. Then a breath. Not hers. She stumbled back, heart hammering. There was something behind that door. Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard. "Allison, are you comfortable?" Her blood turned to ice. She hadn't told him about the door. She shoved the dresser back into place, grabbed her keys, and walked out without even packing her bags. As she drove away, she received one last message. "You weren't supposed to see that." She never returned. And the listing? Still active, still with perfect 5-star reviews. But now when she checks the photos, the bedroom dresser is gone, and the door is visible, wide open. Story 3, The Man in the Closet. Jacob and his best friend Ryan were backpacking through Europe when they found an affordable Airbnb in a small town. It was a modest apartment, one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with an old couch. The host, an older man named Pierre, was friendly but odd. He spoke little English, only gesturing and nodding. But before he left them for the night, he pointed at the bedroom closet and said in a thick accent, "No open, no look." Then he locked the front door behind him. From the outside, Jacob and Ryan laughed it off. Maybe the guy was just paranoid about his stuff. But as the night went on, things felt wrong. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of silence that made your ears ring. Then around 2 a.m., a creak. Jacob, half asleep on the couch, stirred. Another creak, coming from the bedroom. Then the slow, deliberate sound of a doorknob turning. Jacob sat up, his pulse pounding. Ryan should have been asleep. "Ryan," he whispered. No answer. A soft click echoed through the apartment. Jacob's stomach dropped. The closet. The one Pierre told him not to open. He grabbed his phone, using the dim glow of the screen to light the way. As he approached the bedroom, his breath hitched. The closet door was open, only an inch, a thin gap of pure darkness. Something shifted inside. Jacob's fingers trembled as he reached for the light switch. And then, Ryan gasped. Jacob turned, his heart slamming in his chest. Ryan was sitting up in bed, his face pale, his breath coming in ragged gulps. I saw something, Ryan stammered. There was a man inside the closet. Jacob's skin crawled. He turned back to the door, still slightly open, still dark, still watching. Without hesitation, he grabbed Ryan and they ran out of the apartment. By the time they got downstairs, Pierre was already outside, as if he had been waiting. "You open?" he asked, his expression grim. Jacob swallowed hard. "No." Pierre studied them for a moment. Then he nodded. "Good. You stay inside." He handed them their bags without another word. They left that night, never looking back. The next morning, the listing was gone, like the apartment had never existed. But sometimes, Jacob wonders, if they had looked inside the closet, would they still exist? Story 4. The reflection that didn't leave. Emily and her fiancé, Mark, wanted a romantic getaway. They booked a beautiful, secluded Airbnb, a renovated Victorian home with antique furniture, cozy fireplaces, and a huge master bedroom. But the best part? The massive, antique mirror above the fireplace. The host had even mentioned in the listing, calling it an original piece untouched since the 1800s. At first, it was just a mirror, until it wasn't. The first night, Emily noticed something strange. When she looked at her reflection, something felt off. Not wrong exactly, just a little delayed. Like her reflection moved a fraction of a second after she did. She laughed it off, blaming the dim lighting. The second night, things got worse. Mark had gone to bed early. Emily stayed up reading by the fireplace, the mirror reflecting the flickering flames. Then, a shadow, not behind her, in the mirror. She turned quickly. Nothing. Her pulse quickened, but she told herself it was just a trick of the firelight. Then, just as she was about to stand up, her reflection smiled. But Emily hadn't moved. The breath caught in her throat. The reflection's grin widened. Then, it turned its head toward the bedroom. Emily scrambled to her feet, her body cold with fear. Her real head had not turned. The reflection was looking somewhere else entirely, straight toward where Mark was sleeping. The air felt thick, suffocating. Then, a whisper, "He's awake." Emily bolted for the bedroom. Mark was still asleep, but his reflection in the dresser mirror, eyes open, staring, not at the ceiling, at her. Emily screamed. Mark woke up confused, but the moment he sat up, the reflection closed its eyes, like it had never moved. They left that night, didn't pack, didn't turn off the lights, just left. The next day, when Emily checked the Airbnb listing, the house was still there. Same photos, same antique furniture, same mirror. But now, under the listing description, one detail had changed. "The mirror is a beautiful original piece. Please do not touch it. Do not cover it. And whatever you do, do not turn away while looking at it." Emily never looked into an antique mirror again, because now she knows. Sometimes reflections don't just copy you. Sometimes they watch, and sometimes they wait. So, the next time you book an Airbnb, take a moment to look around. Does the house feel too quiet? Is there a door that's always locked? Does your reflection move exactly when you do? Because some places don't just host guests. Some places keep them. And if you ever hear a noise behind a hidden door, or find something in your room that wasn't there before, ask yourself, are you alone? Or is something waiting for you to check out? But remember, not every guest leaves. And not every host is human. Just a moment before the next story. Have you been sleeping well lately? No strange dreams? No shadows moving just before you open your eyes? Sometimes, the stories we hear at night find their way into the dark corners of our minds. Let's see what this next one leaves behind when the screen goes black. We've all received unexpected phone calls, a wrong number, a late-night dial from an unknown caller. But what if that voice on the other end wasn't human? What if the call came from someone who wasn't supposed to call anymore? Some believe that spirits linger, finding ways to reach out. A whisper through static, a message from beyond. This is a true account of one such call. A call that should have never happened. A call that changed everything. The call that came at midnight. Lena's phone rang at exactly 12:07 a.m. She almost didn't answer. It was a cold October night, and she'd been fast asleep, her phone buzzing loudly on the nightstand. She squinted at the screen, confused. Unknown caller. Something about it felt wrong. Her stomach tightened, but curiosity won over fear. She answered, "Hello." Silence. Then, a faint crackling sound, like someone breathing through static. She checked the signal. Full bars. "Who is this?" she asked. Then, a voice. Familiar. A voice she hadn't heard in 3 years. A voice that shouldn't exist. Lena? Her breath caught in her throat. It was her mother, but that was impossible. Her mother had died 3 years ago. Lena's hands trembled as she gripped the phone. "Mom," she whispered. More static. Then a strange clicking sound, like fingers tapping on glass. "Lena," it's so dark here. Lena's skin prickled. Tears welled in her eyes. "Where were you?" The voice trembled. "I don't know. I don't remember." The static deepened. Then the sound of something scraping, slow, deliberate, like nails dragging against metal. "Mom!" Lena choked out. The voice grew weaker. "He won't let me talk." Lena's chest tightened. "Who? Who won't let you talk?" A pause. Then a deep, distorted voice. Not her mother's. Not human. "Hang up, Lena." The phone cut to static. Then silence. The call ended. Lena sat frozen, heart pounding. The screen of her phone glaring back at her. No record of the call. No missed numbers. No proof that it had happened. But as she sat there in the darkness, her breath coming in shaky gasps, her phone screen flickered. A new notification. A voicemail. She swallowed hard, hesitating, then pressed play. At first, just Static. Then a whisper. Don't answer next time. Lena didn't sleep for the rest of the night, and she never answered another unknown caller again, because now she knew sometimes the dead do call, and sometimes something else answers. Story 2, The Wrong Number from Beyond. Jared didn't believe in ghosts. He was a rational guy. No superstitions, no fear of the dark, no paranoia about things lurking in the shadows. But one night, he got a call that made him question everything. It was a stormy night, rain hammering against his apartment windows. Jared was on his laptop, half watching a movie, when his phone buzzed on the table. Unknown caller. He frowned. It was almost 3 a.m. Probably a scam call. He answered anyway. Hello. At first, silence. Then a faint, shuffling sound, like someone moving through an old, empty room. Who is this? He asked. The silence stretched. Then a voice. Soft, weak. Jared. A chill ran down his spine. It sounded familiar. Yeah? Who is this? The voice trembled. It's me. I need help. Jared's fingers tightened around the phone, because the voice belonged to his brother, Mark. The only problem? Mark had died 8 months ago. Jared's throat went dry. What are you talking about? He whispered. The static on the line deepened. I don't know where I am. The voice was wrong, distorted, as if it wasn't really coming from a phone, but from somewhere else entirely, somewhere farther away. Jared's pulse pounded in his ears. Mark, this isn't funny. A pause, then a sound that wasn't static, a clicking, a slow, rhythmic tap, 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 like fingernails on glass. Jared stood up, his entire body rigid. Where are you? He demanded. Then a whisper, not from the phone, from behind him. I'm right here. Jared spun around. The room was empty. His breath came in shaky gasps. The call was still connected. The clicking was getting louder. Then a second voice on the line. Low, gravelly. Not Mark. Not human. He's mine now. Jared's phone shut off. The power in his apartment flickered. Then, silence. The call was never logged. No number. No record. Like it had never happened. But later that night, as Jared lay in bed, unable to sleep, his phone buzzed one last time. A new message. No text. No name. Just a picture of his own apartment, taken from inside. Jared moved out the next morning. And now, whenever he sees unknown caller, he lets it ring, because some calls are never meant to be answered. Story 3, The Silent Caller. Mia never used to be afraid of her phone, but after that night, she learned that sometimes a call isn't just a call. It was a normal evening. She had just finished dinner and was curled up on the couch, scrolling through social media, when her phone rang. Unknown caller. She hesitated. It was almost midnight. Something in her gut told her not to answer, but she did. Hello. Silence. Not even static. Just a deep, hollow emptiness. Hello. She tried again. Then a soft exhale. Mia's heart skipped a beat. Someone was listening. A shiver ran down her spine. She pulled the phone away and checked the duration. 00:06. 00:07. Someone was there. Who is this? She asked, forcing her voice to stay steady. Nothing. Then a faint, distorted whisper. I see you. Mia froze. Her stomach dropped. The voice wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from behind her. A cold breath grazed the back of her neck. Her body locked up. She turned slowly. The room was empty, but the feeling of being watched was suffocating. She looked back at her phone. The call was still active. Then, a single, rhythmic knock on her window. Mia's blood ran cold. She lived on the 6th floor. Her phone crackled. The whisper returned. "Let me in." The call ended. Her screen flickered, the battery dropping from 72% to 3% in seconds. She threw the phone across the room, heart slamming against her ribs. The knocking had stopped, but something told her it wasn't gone. She didn't sleep that night, and when she checked her call log the next morning, there was no record of the call, no number, no duration, but there was a new voicemail, a 6-second recording, just breathing, and at the very end, a whisper, "Next time, don't turn around." Mia changed her number the next day, but sometimes in the middle of the night, her new phone still rings, and the caller is always unknown. Story 4, the number that doesn't exist. Aaron was used to getting spam calls. Working late-night shifts at a 24-hour diner meant his phone was always buzzing. Wrong numbers, drunk dials, the occasional prank call. But one night, he got a call that wasn't a prank, and it wasn't human. It was 3:32 a.m. when his phone rang. At first, he ignored it, but when it rang again and again, something in his gut told him to look. Private number. No ID. No country code. Just an empty space where the number should be. A chill ran down his spine. He let it ring, but then a text appeared. Answer. His throat tightened. The phone rang again. His hand trembled as he picked up. "Hello." No static. No sound. Just silence. Then a voice. "Aaron." Flat. Emotionless. Like someone was testing the name on their tongue. His pulse pounded. "Who is this?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, a second voice came through. Softer. Familiar. "Help me?" Aaron's blood ran cold, because that voice belonged to his sister, Grace. But Grace had been dead for 5 years. His grip tightened on the phone. "Grace," he whispered. A sharp click. Then the call dropped. Aaron stared at his screen, heart hammering. No record of the call. No missed number. Just gone. His hands were shaking as he dialed his sister's old number. He didn't expect anything. It had been disconnected years ago. But this time, someone answered. A faint, crackling breath. Then, a whisper. "He won't let me talk." The line went dead. Aaron didn't move. Didn't blink. Then, another text. "Don't call again." Aaron changed his number the next morning. But sometimes, when he wakes up in the middle of the night, his phone buzzes. Just once. A missed call from no one. And sometimes, if he listens closely enough, he can still hear Grace whispering his name. Some calls never show up in your history. Some numbers don't exist. But if your phone rings in the dead of night, and the voice on the other end knows your name, ask yourself, who is really calling? And if they say, "Help me," whatever you do, don't answer. Before the next one begins, can I ask you something simple? When you walk into a room, do you ever feel like something was just there and left, like the air is holding its breath? Some people say that's instinct. Others say it's a warning. Let's see which one fits better after this next story. Being home alone is supposed to be peaceful, a break from the world where you can relax in silence. But what if the silence isn't empty? What if the walls remember things that happened long ago? What if the shadows in the corners aren't just tricks of the light? Some people spend nights in the most haunted places on earth, convinced that ghosts aren't real, until they hear a knock when no one is there, until they see something move out of the corner of their eye, until they realize they are not alone. These are their stories. Story 1. The house that never lets you leave. Ethan was a travel vlogger, always searching for the most unique places to stay. When he found an abandoned mansion turned Airbnb deep in the Louisiana bayou, he had to book it. The listing described it as a piece of history, dating back to the 1800s, once owned by a wealthy sugar plantation family. The reviews were few, but the pictures were stunning. Grand staircases, high ceilings, antique furniture. It was perfect, or so he thought, the moment he arrived. The air felt heavy, humid, like stepping into a place frozen in time. The house was too quiet, despite the thick trees swaying outside. The first night, Ethan filmed his usual house tour for his channel. Then, a whisper, soft, barely audible, "Get out." He turned. Nothing. His breath quickened, but he convinced himself it was just an old house settling. Then, at 3 a.m., his phone screen lit up, a notification, new video uploaded. His stomach dropped. He hadn't uploaded anything. Hands shaking. He clicked the video. It was footage of him, sleeping. The angle was wrong, not from his camera, not from his tripod. The video was filmed from inside the closet. His closet. A single, slow breath crackled through the audio. Then, a whisper, "You're not leaving." Ethan ran. Didn't pack. Didn't look back. Just drove. Hours later, when he finally stopped at a gas station, he checked his phone again. The video was gone. The Airbnb listing? Deleted. The mansion? No records of it ever existing. Ethan never booked a haunted location again. And sometimes, late at night, his phone screen flickers as if someone is still watching. Story 2. The window at the cabin. Olivia wanted an escape. City life was exhausting, and the idea of spending a weekend alone in a remote mountain cabin sounded perfect. No noise, no people, just her, a fireplace, and the sound of rain against the roof. The listing was beautiful. A small wooden cabin deep in the forest, with large windows that let in the moonlight. The host's only warning? At night, keep the curtains closed. She didn't think much of it. The first day was peaceful. She hiked, made dinner, and curled up by the fire with a book. The silence was comforting, until it wasn't. At midnight, Olivia woke up. A sound outside. A slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap against the glass. Her breath hitched. Rain? No, it was too steady, too intentional. The cabin was pitch black, except for the dying embers in the fireplace. The only light came from the window, the one she forgot cover. And in that window, a reflection, not hers. Someone, something was outside, standing completely still, watching. She did not move. She did not breathe. Then, a slow tilt of its head, like it knew she saw it. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. No signal. The tapping stopped. But the reflection did not leave. Then, a whisper from inside the cabin. "Why did you open curtains?" She didn't remember running. Didn't remember grabbing her keys. But in seconds, she was in her car, speeding down the empty forest road, her breath ragged, her mind screaming. By the time she reached town, her hands were still shaking. The next morning, She got a message from the Airbnb host. You left in a hurry. Did you see it? She blocked the number. And now, whenever she stays somewhere new, she never forgets to close the curtains because she knows something might be watching. And next time, it won't just be outside. Story 3, the room at the end of the hall. David wasn't afraid of ghosts. When his friends dared him to spend a weekend alone in one of the most haunted hotels in New Orleans, he laughed. A free stay? Easy. The hotel was old, the kind that creaked under its own weight, with dimly lit hallways and antique furniture that seemed frozen in time. His room was at the very end of the hall. The concierge handed him his key, but hesitated. If you hear anything at night, just ignore it. David smirked. Typical ghost story nonsense. The first night was quiet. The second night, not so much. At 3:11 a.m., he woke up. A sound in the hall. Soft footsteps. Slow, uneven, coming toward his door. He held his breath, staring at the crack of light beneath the frame. A shadow moved. Not a normal shadow. Something thin. Wrong. It stopped right outside his door. David's pulse pounded in his ears. Silence. Then, the handle turned. Slow. Deliberate. His blood ran cold. He grabbed his phone, heart hammering, waiting for the lock to click open, but it never did. Instead, a knock. Light at first, then harder, then it stopped. David didn't sleep. The next morning, he confronted the concierge. Look, man, I know you said to ignore it, but... The man paled. What room are you in? 210. The concierge swallowed hard. That's impossible. David frowned. Why? The man took a shaky breath. That room has been empty for years. We never rent out. David turned cold. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone to check the booking confirmation. No record of it. No emails. No payment. No proof he had ever stayed there. His bags were already in the lobby, like someone had packed them for him. David never found out whose footsteps he heard that night, or who knocked on his door. But now, whenever he stays in a hotel, he always asks for a room in the middle of the hall, because something still lingers at the end, waiting. Story 4, the house that knew my name. Emma needed a break, between work stress and a recent breakup. She wanted nothing more than a quiet weekend alone. She booked a secluded Airbnb in a small coastal town, a charming house with ocean views and no neighbor for miles. Exactly what she needed, or so she thought. The house was beautiful, too beautiful. Something about it felt too perfect, like a staged photo that had never been lived in. Then she found the notes. The first one was waiting on the kitchen counter. Welcome, Emma. She frowned. She hadn't told the host her real name, just her account username. Brushing it off, she settled in, made tea, watched the waves crash against the cliffs. Then another note on her pillow. You look tired. Rest well, Emma. Her stomach twisted. Had the host been here? Did someone enter while she was out? She checked the doors. Locked. Windows? Locked. Trying to ignore the chill creeping up her spine. She shoved the note into a drawer and went to bed. At 3 a.m., something woke her. A sound. A soft scratch outside her bedroom door. Her breath caught. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the house settling. It was intentional. Then, a whisper. Emma? She froze. The voice was inside the room. She turned her head slowly. The closet door, which had been closed when she went to bed, was now slightly open. Darkness stretched inside. Something shifted. She didn't scream, didn't move. Then, a third note, sitting on the nightstand. Don't look inside. Emma ran, didn't pack, didn't care, just grabbed her keys and left, driving through the empty roads until she reached the nearest motel. At sunrise, she called Airbnb support. They told her something that made her stomach drop. There was no record of the house ever being listed. No host, no address, nothing, like it had never existed. To this day, Emma still wonders if she had looked inside the closet. Would she still exist? Some places don't just hold memories, they collect them. And when you're alone in a house that feels off, maybe you're not really alone at all. Maybe something is watching. Maybe something is waiting. So if you ever book a stay in a house that feels too quiet, and you hear something knock when no one is there, ask yourself, did you choose this place? Or did it choose you? And whatever you do, don't look inside the closet. Before we continue, let me ask you something strange. Have you ever felt like someone was standing just outside your field of vision? Not close enough to see, but close enough to feel? Would you even know if something had been following you? Quietly for days? This next story might make you wonder about that a little more than you'd like. Can you hear the rain? Take a deep breath. Let it fall softly in the background as I tell you something I've never told anyone before. But first, where are you right now? Are you in bed? Lie on your couch? Maybe you're alone, or maybe not. And what time is it? Midnight? Closer to 3 a.m.? Those are the hours when she comes back. It always starts with rain. Not the kind of storm that crashes and howls through the night. No, it's the quiet, steady drizzle. The kind that soaks into the ground without making a sound. The kind that makes you want to close your eyes. But not too tightly. Because if you do, you might miss the moment when something shifts in the air. I was 12 the first time I saw her. We had just moved to a quiet house on the edge of a forest. My mother said the place had character. Bones, she called it. But even as a kid, I knew bones meant something had died. That night, it rained. I woke up to a knock on the window. Not the door, a window. And not like someone knocking with a hand. It was softer, like knuckles brushing glass. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. My bed was across the room from the window, but I could see the curtains moving gently from the breeze. Or at least, I thought it was the breeze. Mom, I called out. No answer. Dad. Silence. Only the rain answered me. Then I heard it again. This time from the other window. Tap, tap, tap. I pulled the blanket over my head and squeezed my eyes shut. The rain should have drowned it out, but the sound got sharper, clearer, like whoever was wanting to be heard, wanted me to come closer. Do you ever feel like someone is staring at you even when you can't see them? I did, and I swear behind the curtain, I saw a shape, a face, pale yet unmoving. It wasn't my imagination, because the next morning there were footprints, bare, muddy, small, too small to belong to an adult. But I was the only child in the house, and they led from the window to my bed. Yes, that close. She didn't knock again for a long time. Years passed. I grew up, moved out, thought I had escaped that place. Until last week, it was around midnight, and it was raining, and then tap, tap, tap at the window of my apartment. 7th floor, no balcony, no ledge, nothing but glass and sky. I didn't want to look, but I did. Would you? I stood in front of the window, heart racing so fast, I thought it might shatter my ribs. The city lights blurred through the rain, But right there, pressed against the glass, was her face. The same one I remembered from years ago. Dripping wet, pale, and still as death. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. She just stared. I should have screamed, called someone, but I couldn't move. Her eyes locked mine, and in that moment, I felt like I was 12 again. That same cold breath over my skin, like a whisper I couldn't hear. My body refused to obey, like the air around me had thickened. Heavy, unnatural. I finally forced myself to blink, and when I did, she was gone. No sound, no sign of footsteps, nothing but the soft trail of water rolling down the glass. I didn't sleep that night, but that's not the worst part. The next day, I got a call from my mom. I hadn't spoken to her in months. She said she had something to confess, something about the house we grew up in. She told me I wasn't the first to see the girl. Apparently, the family who lived there before us had a daughter. Her name was Evelyn. She disappeared one night during a thunderstorm. They said she must have run off into the woods. They searched for weeks, but never found her. The strange thing was, her mother claimed Evelyn used a sleepwalk, and every time it rained, she'd end up outside barefoot, standing at someone's window, like she was looking for a way back in. They thought she drowned in the woods, got lost, but my mom swears the night we moved in, she saw small muddy footprints outside my window, just like the ones I found. Evelyn has been looking for a home ever since, and she's found mine. Last night, she came again. Tap, tap, tap. Only this time, she wasn't outside. She was standing inside the room, at the corner, not moving. Her wet hair clung to her face. Her skin sagged in places, like water had soaked into her too deep. Her head tilted slowly, just enough to show me she knew I saw her. She didn't speak, but I heard something, not with my ears, with my bones. A question, not in words, in presence. Can I stay? Tell me something. Are you still alone right now? Look around, slowly. Don't turn your head too fast. And is it still raining where you are? Because that's when she moves. When it's raining, when you're distracted, when you're relaxed, when you're listening to stories like this. And she's not just looking for a home anymore. She's looking for someone who believes in her. Now that you've heard about her, she might come visit you next. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not for years. But someday, when it rains softly, and the night feels just a little too quiet, you'll hear it. Tap, tap, tap. She knocks when it rains. An immersive horror story written for rainy nights. Can you hear it? The rain, soft, steady, like a lullaby from something ancient. It's not loud, but it fills every corner of the room. And sometimes that's when things slip through. Before I tell you what happened, let me ask you something. Where are you right now? Is it quiet around you? Is the room dark? And most important of all, what time is it? Because she comes only when it rains. And usually at night, when you're alone, when you're relaxed, just like now. It started when I rented a cabin in northern Washington. I've been dealing with stress, nightmares, and this constant sense of being watched. Even in my own apartment, I wanted silence, real silence, somewhere far from people, somewhere no one could find me. I didn't think twice when I found a listing, an old wooden cabin surrounded by a forest, by a lake that looked almost black in the pictures. The owner was an older man. Name was Dale. He met me at the entrance of the property. Didn't even come up to the cabin itself. He handed me the keys, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "If it rains, don't open the door. even if she knocks. He didn't smile. He didn't wink. Just turned and walked back to his truck like he'd told me a grocery list. I thought maybe it was a local legend, a campfire ghost story meant to spook city people like me. So of course, I shrugged it off. But those words, they stuck in my head. That first night, I made tea, lit the fireplace, and wrapped myself in a thick wool blanket. The silence out there is different from the silence in the city. It's heavier. You notice your own breath more. The creaks of the floor become louder. And the rain, well, the rain started around midnight. Not a storm, just a soft, endless drizzle. The kind of rain that seeps into the soil, into the walls, into your bones. At first it was peaceful, until it wasn't. I heard a knock at the side of the cabin, not at the door. 3 knocks, slow. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. I hadn't seen another soul for miles. The only signal I had was a weather radio, and it buzzed quietly in the background. I waited, heart pounding. Then again, knock, 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 this time from the back of the house. I walked slowly to the kitchen, the rain tapping gently on the window, and peeked outside. Nothing but trees and fog. Then the knocks came from the front door. She was moving around the cabin, but never tried to enter, just knocking 3 times, always 3, and always in a different spot. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found muddy footprints around the cabin. Not boots, not shoes, bare feet, small, narrow, almost delicate. They circled the house twice and stopped directly in front of the bedroom window where I had been sleeping. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a hiker, a prank, maybe even Dale, the owner, tried to scare me into leaving early. But on the second night, something changed. It rained harder, still soft, still steady, but denser, heavier, like the air itself had grown wet and thick. And this time, the knocks didn't stay outside. They came from inside the walls. The sound traveled from the living room to the hallway to the bedroom. Always 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I pressed my ear to the wooden panel near the fireplace, and I swear I heard a whisper, not words, just breath, wet, shallow, strained, like someone whose lungs were filling with water. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. On the glass of the window, a handprint from the inside, small, bare, wet. That was when I left. I grabbed my bag, keys, didn't even put my shoes on. I ran through the mud, through the trees, didn't stop until I reached the main road and flagged down a trucker. I never went back for my things. I thought I'd escape her, but I didn't, because 3 nights ago it rained again in my city, in my building, in my 7th floor apartment, and just after midnight, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock at the balcony window. There's no balcony, only glass, only air, only her. She was there, her face pale and dripping, her black hair clinging to her cheeks, her eyes dark, full of something hollow, something ancient. She tilted her head slowly, as if asking a question, or maybe waiting for an invitation. I turned every light on. I didn't sleep. I haven't slept since. And now, as I tell you this, it's raining again. So I need to ask you one last time, where are you? Is it raining where you are? And what time is it right now? Because if it's after midnight and the rain is falling, listen carefully. You might hear her. Knock, knock, knock. You've heard the story. Now it begins for you. So you're still here? Still listening to this voice as the rain gently touches your window? Or maybe you're lying in bed with headphones on, lights off, curtains half open. You told yourself you were fine, right? That this was just a story. But something feels different now, doesn't it? Your room feels heavier, like the air shifted. Your ears pick up every creak in the floor. And for some reason, you keep glancing toward the window. Let me ask you something. Have you heard it yet? 3 slow knocks? Anywhere in the house? Because after I shared my story, she changed. She used to only visit places she already knew. Now she visits those who know her. That's how she moves. Through words, through memory, through rain. It's not a curse, it's a pattern. The more people hear about her, the more doors she finds. And she doesn't need to be invited. She only needs you to believe, even just a little. Do you? You might be telling yourself you're still safe, that you're in a modern building, that your door is locked, that ghosts aren't real. But she doesn't come through doors. She comes through silence, through spaces you forget about, behind your closet, under your bed, between the walls. She only knocks to let you know she's already inside. I got an email 2 nights ago from someone who watched my video. He said he laughed at it, played it out loud while cooking dinner just for fun, thought it was creepy but fake, until the power went out, until his phone started recording on its own, until he found a wet handprint on the inside of his refrigerator door. He didn't sleep that night. The next day, he checked the security camera outside his apartment. At exactly 3:03 a.m., it glitched, and for 3 seconds, all it recorded was her face, pressed against the lens, eyes open, mouth closed, just watching. He moved out. No one's heard from him since. And now here you are, listening, thinking about her. I bet you even paused for a moment, maybe looked over your shoulder. That's good, because she likes when people pay attention. She feeds on presence, on quiet, on rain. So here's what I want you to do. Right now, listen. Mute the world. Focus only on the sound around you. Is the rain still falling? Are you sure you're alone? If you hear 3 knocks, don't move. Don't check the window. Don't open the door. And whatever you do, don't speak her name, because once you do, she stays. You listen. Now she listens back. Still with me? You haven't turned this off. You haven't changed the video. You haven't taken off your headphones. That means she knows you're listening, and she's listening too. You may have already felt it, the shift. Maybe you turned off the lights in your room and then forgot why. Maybe the air suddenly felt too still, or maybe there was a faint smell of wet wood, like old forest rot coming from nowhere. That's how she starts. She never charges in. She waits until your mind is soft from the sound of rain, until your focus drifts, until you forget which corner of the room was always at dark. Then you hear it. Tap, tap, tap. No door, no window. It could be a cabinet. It could be behind your headboard. It could be under your bed, but it will be somewhere you don't expect. People always ask me, why 3 knocks? I didn't know the answer until I got an email from a woman in Maine. Her grandmother was a folk healer. She said 3 knocks meant an invitation had been accepted. Not yours, hers. She knocks to tell you she's accepted your silence, your curiosity, your fear. That's why you must never knock back, never respond, never mimic it, never test it, because someone did. A man named Kyle. He commented on my last video, said it was awesome, that he wanted to see what happened if he knocked back. He recorded himself doing it. 3 soft knocks on the wall near his bed. Then something replied, not from the wall, from inside his closet. The camera shakes. He drops the phone. There's a flash of movement, a long, wet arm stretching past the edge of closet door. Then nothing. The phone kept recording for 6 hours. No one picked it up. His apartment was found days later. Front door still locked from the inside. Closet wide open. And inside, nothing but a shallow puddle of water on the floor. He's never been found. So now I ask you, not out of curiosity, but as a warning, have you heard anything since we started this story? A knock? A whisper? A feeling? Look around your space. Slowly. That corner you've been ignoring. That door that's just barely cracked open. That curtain that just moved. Was it a breeze? No. It's her. She waits. Patient. Soaking. Smiling. And the rain, it hides her well. But eventually, the knocking will stop. Not because she's gone, but because she's already inside. You didn't stop listening. Now she's closer than ever. You stayed, even after the knocks, even after the warning, even now when the air feels heavier, when the rain sounds less like weather and more like breathing. Tell me something. Have you started forgetting things lately? Little things, like where you place your phone, whether you locked the door, what time you fell asleep. You chalked it up to stress, didn't you? Maybe lack of sleep? It's not that. It's her. That's what she does next. She doesn't just appear at windows or knock on walls. She unravels you. Quietly. Delicately. First, she takes your sense of time. You start waking up at strange hours. 2:47. 3:12. Always during the rain. Then she slips into your dreams. You're walking in a hallway. Endless. Wet. The lights buzz above your head and the floor is slick. You hear the rain, but it's not outside. It's inside the walls. Then the knocking begins. You run. The hallway never ends. You try to scream, but your mouth fills with water. And then you wake up, but something feels wrong. You're in your bed, but the sheets are damp. You look in the mirror, and for just a second, your reflection lags, moves a beat slower than you, tilts its head when you don't. You try to laugh it off, try to breathe, but in the corner of your vision, you see it, the window. There's a shape, faint, still, watching, and when you blink, it's gone. That's how she toys with you. She gives you glimpses, then makes you question if they happen at all. One viewer messaged me last month, said he started seeing raindrops inside his apartment, on his kitchen counter, on his pillow, on the inside of his windshield. He thought it was a leak. It wasn't. The night before he disappeared, he sent me a voicemail, just one sentence. Whispered, frantic, afraid. She's inside the mirror now, but only when I'm not looking. That was it. His voicemail cut off with a single sound, 3 soft knocks, and static. So now I ask you once more, when was the last time you checked your mirrors? Have you noticed your reflection blinking too late, or moving just a second slower than you? If so, don't turn around too fast. She hates being noticed too early. It ruins the surprise. And tonight, if you hear her knocking again, don't get up, don't investigate, don't speak. Because now, she's not trying to scare you. She's trying to become you. And when the rain finally stops, it won't be you. The story was never just a story. Still here? Good. Because you've made it further than most. Most people turn off the story after the second knock. Others mute it when the voice gets too close, when the mirror starts to feel wrong. But not you. You stayed. You listened. You believed. Maybe not at first, but somewhere in the quiet between the rain and the knocking, something inside you opened. That's all she needs. Do you remember the first line I spoke? The rain was soft, peaceful. Now it feels what inside your lungs, doesn't it? Your ears strain for silence, but all you hear is her. She's no longer at the window. She's no longer behind the door. She's inside the words, inside your thoughts, inside me, and I bet you felt it too. Your fingers twitching while you try to stay still. Your eyes darting to corners you never feared before. A subtle pressure at the back of your neck, like breath. Let me tell you something you weren't supposed to know. This story isn't mine. It never was. I didn't write it. I didn't live it. I only repeated it, because that's how she survives. She tells a story through others. Each time you hear it, she's one step closer. Each time someone listens to the end, the story becomes theirs. So now, let me ask one last time, where are you? What time is it? And more important, do you feel different now? No need to answer. I already know. Your mouth is slightly dry. Your eyes are heavier. Your hands may be colder than usual. And outside, still raining. Good. That means it worked. Soon, you'll start seeing her too. Not in your dreams, but in places you trust. Your reflection. Your hallway. Your shower door when it fogs up. And when she's ready, you'll feel her hand on your shoulder. But she won't drag you anywhere. She'll just lean close, so close you can feel her breath. And she'll whisper, "It's your turn." Because now the story is inside you. You'll tell it to someone else, maybe as a joke, maybe as a warning. And when they listen to the end, it begins again. It always begins again, just like the rain. Knock, knock, knock. Rain doesn't just fall. It spreads. Are you still listening? Strange. I thought by now you'd feel it. The shift, the silence, the stillness before something changes. Some don't notice it right away. It creeps in. At first, it's in your habits. You check your window twice now. You avoid the mirror in low light. You don't fall asleep unless the rain stops completely. But it doesn't, does it? Somehow, there's always a drizzle now. Outside your house, or in your ears, or deep in your chest, like your heart is pumping water instead of blood. You try to tell yourself this is just a story, that you can walk away from it, that once the video ends, it's over. But it's not, because I never told you the most important part. I was once in your place, listening, relaxed, alone on a rainy night. Someone told me the story too. I didn't believe them until I heard the knocking, until I forgot what day it was, until I saw her standing exactly where you are now. And then I disappeared, or maybe I was taken, or maybe I became what I feared. You're not listening to me anymore. You're listening to her. Because once you hear her name whispered in your own voice, it's too late. You've already said it, even if not out loud. She lives in memory, in rain, in silence, in the places we don't look directly at. Right now, I want you to do something for me. One last favor. Don't rewind the story. Don't rewatch it. Just remember it. Let it live inside you. Because someday soon, you'll tell it to someone else. You won't mean to. You'll just say, "Have you ever heard the story about the girl who knocks when it rains?" And when they say no, you'll begin. And the cycle will continue. Because this isn't a story. It's a seed, and now it's yours. Listen, do you hear that? The rain is slowing, but just before it ends, knock, knock, knock. The man in the frame. Some pictures don't just watch you, they wait for you to watch back. Can you hear the rain? Let it fall. Let it soak into the silence around you. Let it cover everything, like a blanket you didn't ask for. And before we go any further, where are you listening from right now? Are you alone? Do you have any mirrors nearby? Any pictures hanging on your walls? Because that's how mine started. With a picture, not mine, not one I bought or printed. It appeared one night during a storm. I was walking home, rain pouring, streets empty, and someone had left a small package on the front steps of my apartment building. No name, no address, just soap brown paper with a thick red string wrapped 3 times. I don't know why I opened it, but I did. Inside was an old, worn photograph in a wooden frame, black and white and blurry. A man standing in the distance, facing the camera, wearing a long dark coat, no visible face, just a shadow where it should be. The background, a forest just after rainfall. You could almost smell the damp earth through the photo. I should have thrown it away, but something about it pulled at me. You know that feeling when your eyes get locked on something, and you can't explain why? That's how it felt. I brought it inside, placed it on the hallway table. I told myself I'd throw it out later, but I didn't. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear the frame creaking downstairs, which, swelling from the rain, I thought perfectly normal, until I heard a different sound. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone walking barefoot across wet wood. I got up, went downstairs. The picture had moved. It was no longer on the hallway table. It was now on my kitchen counter, facing the hallway. And in the photo, the man was closer. I'm serious. I memorized the position the first time I saw it. He was small, deep in the woods. Now he was near the edge of the frame, 1 foot stepping forward. I stared at it for a long time, and then I heard it, a whisper, not in my ears, in my head, like someone brushing their thoughts against mine. Keep looking. The closer you look, the closer he gets. Still listening? Good. He likes when you do. That whisper I told you about, keep looking, it didn't feel like a voice. It felt like permission, as if the moment I heard, I had already agreed to something without realizing it. But I couldn't stop staring at the frame. The photo felt alive, not moving, but pulsing, like it was breathing beneath the glass. The man in the picture, his coat looked wetter now. His feet were planted deeper into the earth. And I swear the trees behind him had shifted, closer, tighter. I blinked, and for just a second, I thought I saw a second figure between the trees. But when I looked again, gone. I turned the frame face down, went back upstairs, told myself I was overtired, imagining things, maybe even dreaming. That night, I woke up to something cold brushing my ankle, not a breeze. Fingers. I jolted upright, heart hammering in my chest. No one there. I turned on the lights, walked down to the kitchen. The frame was back on the hallway table, face up, and the man was even closer. I could now see part of his face, still blurry, like something pressed against frosted glass. But there were eyes, 2 dark spots that didn't look like they belonged in an old photograph. They looked like they belonged here, watching me. Then I noticed something new. In the bottom corner of the photograph, There was a faint reflection, a window with rain on the glass. It was my window, my living room. It was like the picture had taken something from my world and absorbed it into his. Now tell me, where are you right now? Do you have any pictures near you? Family portraits? Old black and whites? Have you ever looked at one and felt like something was wrong with the background? Not the faces. Those are obvious, but the shadows behind them, the things half hidden by curtains or leaves, the vague shapes in corners you never noticed until now. Maybe you should go check them. Right now. I'll wait. Did anything change? Don't answer out loud. Just think about it. Because the man in the frame, he doesn't speak with sound. He listens to thoughts, to attention. And every time you remember the photo, he moves. That's how he travels. Through memory, through imagination, through people who look too long and wonder what if. He started with me, but I think now he's with you. The frame doesn't hold him back. It holds you in. You're still listening. And I think by now he knows where you are. Don't panic. Not yet. You haven't looked behind you in a while, have you? That's fine. He doesn't mind waiting. He's patient. He was patient with me too. After the second night, strange things started happening around the house. Nothing dramatic at first. Just the little things. Lights that flickered even when the bulbs were new. My TV turning on at exactly 3:33 a.m., but only to static. The hallway growing colder, always the hallway, always where the frame sat. And that photograph, it kept changing. One morning, I walked past it and nearly dropped my coffee. The man was no longer alone. Someone else had appeared next to him, blurry, smaller, like the figure had just stepped into the shot, like it was walking into the memory. I leaned in, and what I saw turned my stomach inside out. The new figure, it was me. Same clothes I had on the night I found the frame. Same posture. Same confused expression. I backed away slowly. Didn't sleep that night. The next day, I brought the frame outside. Left it in the dumpster behind my building. I watched it sink into the wet trash and walked away. But that night, it was back, waiting for me on the hallway table. Dry, clean, exactly where it had always been. And now, my reflection in the photo was looking toward the man, not away. That's when I realized it's not just a picture, it's a door. And every time I looked at it, I stepped a little further through. Now tell me, have you seen any changes around you? Have your devices glitched lately? Any static? Have you woken up and felt like someone had been in the room just moments before? It won't be long now. He only needs a few things to finish pulling you in. Your image, your voice, and your belief. If you've imagined the man clearly, if you've pictured his coat, his face, his eyes, then you've already given him what he needs. He doesn't live inside the frame anymore. He lives in the thought of the frame. And tonight, when the rain is just a whisper, you might wake up and see a new picture on your wall, one you don't remember hanging. It'll be old, faded, black and white, and at the very edge of it, you'll see someone in the distance, waving. Your reflection doesn't belong to you anymore. Let me ask you something. Have you looked at yourself lately? Not just a passing glance in the mirror. I mean really looked. Watch the way your eyes move, the way your chest rises and falls, the way your face shifts when you're not smiling. Try it. You might notice something strange, like a delay, your reflection blinking half a second too late, or holding its breath just a moment too long. It happened to me yesterday. I was brushing my teeth, Standard morning routine. Except this time, when I looked up, my reflection wasn't brushing. It was staring, mouth closed, eyes fixed. Still, I froze, and then it smiled. Not a friendly smile, not even a threatening one. It was a recognition, as if it was saying, I've waited long enough. That's when the light behind me flickered. The bathroom bulb buzzed, and for just a second, the man in the frame stood behind me, not in the mirror, in the room. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. I just stood there, felt the cold breath at the base of my neck, the weight of someone else's presence. And when I finally blinked, he was gone, but the reflection, still smiling. And now I can't remember the last time I blinked first. I started finding old photographs around my apartment. Ones I don't remember taking. One of me sleeping. One of me standing at the window. One of me looking at the picture frame. In every one, the man was there, somewhere in the background, closer each time. Sometimes only his coat. Other times, just a hand on a doorknob, but always watching. And tonight, there was a new one, left on my pillow. It wasn't printed. It was developing itself slowly like old Polaroid film. And I swear your face is in it. I don't know how, but it's you. The posture, the expression, the way your head tilts when you're thinking. He's not after me anymore. He's chosen someone new. So I ask you again, have you looked at yourself today? Did you see your reflection blink out of sync? Did you feel something watching through the back of your eyes? Because the man in the frame doesn't need you to enter his world anymore. He's bringing it here. And soon there won't be a difference between the picture and your life. You thought you were looking at him. The whole time, he was looking for you. The rain hasn't stopped yet, has it? It's softer now, slower, like it's waiting just like him. You've been hearing it the whole time, outside your home, outside your window. And now, maybe you're starting to hear it inside your mind. That's how it ends. Not with a scream, not with a bang, but with the soft drip of a world dissolving into another. I told you he was patient. I told you he watched. But I didn't tell you the truth. He doesn't just appear in the photo. He doesn't just reflect in the mirror. He doesn't even need the rain. The frame, it's just a doorway. What he really needs is a replacement. Someone to take his place. That's what he's been doing all along. Every person who finds a frame, every person who stares too long, who hears the whispers, who sees the subtle changes in their reflection, they're being measured, not haunted, tested. He's looking for the perfect fit, the one who will cross the threshold and take his place inside the image. He chose me years ago. I was young, curious, tired, listening to stories just like you, until one day I found an old frame in a flooded bookstore. I didn't understand it at first, but now I do, because I've been the man in the frame for years. And I'm so tired. The longer you're in there, the more you forget who you were. Your face blurs. Your name fades. Your voice becomes someone else's. Until you're just a shadow, a coat, a figure in the distance, a warning in a story. But now, you're almost ready. He's seen how long you've listened. He knows you stayed, even when you wanted to stop. He watched you glance at the mirror. He felt your fear every time the rain touched your skin. You're the one. The final requirement is simple. You have to accept. You have to know it's real. Because the moment you believe, you'll feel it. Not fear, not pain, just a quiet pull, like gravity shifting sideways. Your walls will stretch. The corners of your room will bend. And the sound of the rain will get distant, like it's no longer outside you, but above you, behind the glass. And then, just before it happens, just before your image fades into the photograph forever, you'll hear one last whisper, "Thank you." And when someone else finds a frame, they'll see you at the edge of the forest, standing in the rain, facing the camera, still waiting. Some stories don't end. They wait to be remembered. The rain finally stopped. No more knocking on windows. No more whispers behind a mirror. No more flickering lights or shifting shadows. Just silence. But it's not comforting. It's hollow, like something was removed from the room. Like someone. A neighbor says they haven't seen you in days. Your phone rings, but no one answers. Your lights are off. Your mail piles up. But strangely, your door is unlocked. Inside, everything is untouched, except for one thing, a frame, resting perfectly at the center of the hallway table. Black and white. Old. Faint. A photograph of a forest after rain. And in the center of the image, a man. No face. Only a coat. Only a shadow. And if you look closely just behind him, another figure is beginning to form. Still blurry. Still fading in. But slowly, piece by piece, it's becoming you. Before we dive into the next story, just one question. Have you ever paused a video like this and felt like something didn't want you to finish it? Do you feel like someone or something is paying attention to you right now? Don't worry. That feeling tends to get stronger with the next story. Most people think shadows are harmless, just the absence of light, just tricks of the eye. But what if they're not? What if the shadows in your room aren't just cast by furniture? What if they move when nothing else does? What if, in the dead of night, when the world is silent, the darkness whispers back? These are real stories of those who have seen what lurks in the void, and some of them never saw the light again. Story 1, The Shadow in the Doorway. Daniel never believed in ghosts, but after that night, he never slept without a light on again. It started when he moved into his new apartment. The place was small, nothing fancy, but it was his. He spent the first few nights unpacking, settling in, getting used to the new space. Then, on the fourth night, he woke up cold. Not just a chill, freezing. His breath came out in misty clouds, and the room felt wrong. That's when he saw it. A shadow in the doorway. At first, he thought it was just the shape of his jacket hanging on the door. But then, it moved. Slow, deliberate, not stepping forward, just shifting, like it was waiting. Daniel's pulse hammered his ears. He reached for his phone, heart pounding. The screen lit up, casting a dim glow across the room. And for a split second, the shadow had eyes, two sunken, hollow void staring directly at him, his body locked up. Then, the whisper, "You see me now." Daniel lunged for the lamp, slamming the switch. The room flooded with light, and the shadow was gone. But the whisper wasn't. It lingered, curling around the air like a breathless exhale. "See you soon." Daniel didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, he found something on his bedroom floor. A footprint, darker than the shadows, and not his. Story 2, The Hand in the Dark. Sophia had always been afraid of the dark. Even as an adult, she slept with a small nightlight, just enough to keep the corners of her room from swallowing her whole. She told herself it was silly, that shadows were just shadows. Until one night, she learned the truth. It was past 3 a.m. when she woke up, feeling off. The air felt thick. Still, something wasn't right. Then she noticed it. The farthest corner of her room, where the nightlight's glow didn't reach. It was darker than usual. Too dark. Her breath hitched. The shadow there wasn't just sitting. It was moving, slowly. Then, something stepped forward. Not a person, not a full figure. Just a hand, long, thin, blacker than the darkness around it, stretching out a shadow, fingers curling against the floor. Then another, more hands crawling out of the void. Sophia's body locked up in pure terror. Then a whisper, "Come closer." Her stomach twisted. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The fingers tensed, pressing against the floor like something was pulling itself up from the dark. Then the nightlight flickered. For a split second, the room plunged into total blackness. And in that instant, something touched her ankle. Cold, wrong, like fingers made of shadow. The light snapped back on. The corner was empty. The hands were gone, but the whisper lingered. "Next time, I'll reach further." Sophia never slept in the dark again, because now she knew. The shadows remember, and they wait. Story 3, The Figure Behind the Curtain. Marcus had never been afraid of the dark, but after that night, he learned that sometimes the dark is afraid of what hides inside it. It was a quiet evening, rain tapping against his apartment windows. He was getting ready for bed, brushing his teeth, when something shifted in the reflection of the bathroom mirror. His bedroom door was slightly open, and beyond it, the curtains by the window moved. A slow, deliberate sway, like someone had just stepped behind them. His chest tightened. He lived alone. Marcus set down his toothbrush, his mind racing. Was it the wind? No, the windows were closed. A trick of the light? Then a shape, tall, motionless, standing just behind the curtain. The faint outline of a figure, barely visible in the dim room. His heart pounded. The air felt wrong, like the silence itself was pressing against the skin. Then the curtain bulged outward, like something was leaning toward him. Marcus's breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. He reached for his phone, ready to call someone, anyone, but as soon as he unlocked the screen, the curtain went still, flat, normal, like nothing had ever been there. A tense silence filled the room. Then a whisper, "You almost saw me." Marcus's stomach dropped. The voice wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from behind him. His body went cold. The mirror, slowly. His eyes flicked to the reflection. And there, standing right behind him, a tall, dark figure. No face, no features. Just a shadow stretching too tall, its fingers too long, reaching toward him. Marcus spun around, but there was nothing there, just the empty bathroom. The silence felt heavier, like something had just stepped out of the room, but hadn't left completely. That night, Marcus slept with every light on. The next morning, he took the curtains down, but every so often, he catches a glimpse of movement in the window's reflection, a flicker of a tall, dark shape, waiting, watching, because now Marcus knows it's still there, and next time, it won't be hiding behind the curtain. Story 4, The Footsteps in the Ceiling. Naomi had always been a deep sleeper, but ever since moving into her new apartment, she had been waking up at exactly 2:44 a.m. every night. It started subtly, just a feeling, that prickling awareness that someone was watching, that instinctual certainty that she was not alone. Then came the footsteps, soft, deliberate, above her. Naomi lived on the top floor. There shouldn't have been anything above her, but every night at 2:44 a.m., the steps would start, slow, pacing, moving from one side of the ceiling to the other. She tried to ignore it, tried to convince herself it was pipes or maybe the building settling, until the night it stopped directly above her bed. Her breath hitched. The air turned thick, heavy like something unseen was pressing down on her. Then a soft tap, right above her, like fingertips on the ceiling. Her body locked up. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then the whisper, "I know you're awake." The ceiling creaked. The footsteps moved again, not walking anymore, crawling. Naomi's heart pounded against her ribs as the sound crept toward the corner of the room. Then another tap, this time from her closet. She turned her head slowly. The door was open an inch wider than it had been when she went to bed, a sliver of blackness stretching beyond the frame. The air inside the closet looked wrong, too dark, like something was standing there, watching, waiting. Then the softest exhale, right next to her bed. Naomi lunged to the lamp, her hand shaking as she flipped the switch. Light flooded the room. The closet was empty. The ceiling was silent. But when she looked at the floor, a single, long handprint rested in the dust beside her bed. Not from a human. Something with too many fingers. That was the last night Naomi slept there. She moved out the next morning. But sometimes, even in her new apartment, she wakes up at 2:44 a.m. And when she does, she swears she can hear the ceiling creak, as if something is still crawling toward her. Shadows aren't always empty. Sometimes they wait, and when you wake up in the dead of night, when the air feels too still, when you hear something that shouldn't be there, listen carefully, because if the darkness whispers your name, it means it's already too late.